Let's just get the 1AC underway.
Gang. All right, we all good?
You got time too? Not me.
I got it. I'll begin. Executive pleasure ensures that please that forth nonsense away their ability to contest any and all future deportation, even the smallest infraction, ensures deportation of women at all 17 sessions, pushing federal prosecutors to bypass courts and hardline strategy on deportation. Prosecutors press nonsense to sign away rights. Immigrants are signing plea agreements which block them from accessing, seeking asylum. There are commonplace under such court record amendments in the DOJ and interviews such as federal prosecutors increasingly likely to demand plea bargains for non-citizens, sign away their rights. And element expert and waiver said that the attacks are affecting many who should be heard in immigration courts using threats of prosecution and prison. A student from China planned to take tests on behalf of another Wang signed a plea that waived her right to the women who played Wang signed agreements with identical written. All three were immediately deported. Someone like Ms. Shan came here from college and she don't have some different might not realize that they can qualify for relief. LGBT clients who don't realize being harmed is basically asylum. The impact is racism, rampant, and violence. Con 17. Deportations are evolving into a phenomenon of nativism, racism, and xenophobia. Sweep the United States escalated immigrants delivering mortal fear, agents picking them up from and discarding this cruel expulsion is justified in the label of removing rapists and criminals. Pretty settled families, the separated and children's parents tearing apart spouses can no longer be defended. Deportation of community is violation of the right to life, and the please can and must be ruled unconstitutional. Penalties existing precedent to apply the deportation due process rights waivers and establish constitutional bulwarks against abuse. Element all 18. There is potential for another ineffective assistance claim that under the Padilla line based upon a plea was acting non-citizens who waive in the future unspecified actions not the same as asking to waive deportation when removability is already clear. The citizen can not decide whether waive defense in the future proceedings and cannot intelligent or voluntarily decide to sign in deportation due process rights solves empirics prove. Element all 18 non-citizens with the right to remain in roughly 50% of the cases in which ICE officers seek to remove one and no circumvention against all 5. Few are willing to act in clear violation of these rules and when not introduced a total plea bargaining was substantially curtailed. L. Fast concluded that the sharp bargains abolished the more substantive even more likely to succeed the pressure could shift because prosecuting control regardless ethical rules his prosecutors had to lie to the court and deference gaslights discrimination against non-citizens after ruling for rights to the key to solve Kagan 15. The court concluded that the judiciary had no role in bringing decisions to arrest, detain, and deport non-citizens. The result was that immigration law became a constitutional oddity. Immunity, the civil liberties revolution, the exception will reduce the doctrine of enterprise. Indeed, as shadow courts show discovering the ways in which non-citizens the rest of the court official takes that you could declare broadly the constitutional rights applied in immigration. The court may have one small step right at a time. The court already started this process announced in South thus the plan result that the Supreme Court of the United States ought to abolish plea bargaining over deportation due process rights in the United States criminal justice system by ruling that this please violate the right to effective assistance. Interim-based concrete actions are key to address infrastructural questions that appear academic denouncement papers over Brian 12. What we're supposed to do, even though all the true given existing conditions that academic left good at carrying out critiques and denounce, therefore proposing realistic alternatives and things, abstractly knowing how network structures and regimes of attraction would allow have to be reinvented to create a workable alternative. We seem stuck without ever explaining what is to be done at phase 2. The critique of tasking extends jump in the way. These things can dirty things that are doomed to fail. 6 billion people depend on networks of production, food, shelters, medicine. How will you meet these problems? Who is taking serious by the distribution of a production system? The critique is easy to say we best every opponent we occupy moral superiority. Even everyone knows what's going on. Even the Tea Party knows we prefer to denounce. And then what I see is not reformism. It does not conflate change with progress or validate legal institutions. Any tactical intervention to reduce the violence while exposing the contradictions within the law's Phase 13 movements are making demands that throw U.S. law into crisis because they identify purportedly neutral since the key vectors of violence. These analyses produce a different relation to the law reform strategy than the narrative about law reform. The reform uses a tactical transformation focused intervention that reduces violence without expanding harmful systems campaigning against gang injunctions in Oakland succeeded within a larger set of men not limited to the current structure of American law. The region's portfolio funding identity doctrines, housing, job training, ending prevailing in California's 3 strikes, local ending all collaboration between government and ICE. Advocates have won significant victories convincing jurisdictions to refuse to participate in their tactics. Seek material change in the lives of vulnerable populations rather than recognition of form of inclusion. And Afro-pessimists claim that blackness is ontological, profoundly dehistoricizing and disempowering. It's a conclusion that requires knowing the particularized context that drove development and adopting a totalizing and revisionist history that pays over indigenous genocide. Also buys in nihilism that reproduces colonial domination. Kawa Nui 17. That there is no institutional capacity in which black signals have certain levels and that they're only instruments, not agents. I cite Bacon's brilliant asked Wilson how he could reconcile the position in light of these telling example of black agents in committing genocidal violence against Indians. He responded by asking why it didn't look to the horses they rode. Race is not a static ontology. Race is ever shifting to the third blackness. Its ontological is recapitulating colonizing thought is truth. The Afro-pessimist road is not from race to slavery, but from slavery to race. I offer Bacon's brilliant as an example of black body is not socially dead. I challenge ontological absolutism. My critique is in historicizing race. Wilderness and it happens to be a historical Bacon's rebellion to racialized child slavery with a deliberate choice. English came to overtime. The English did not immediately devise its status. And 1619, Virginia had no legal law against slavery. Africans were indentured servants alongside Europeans. Courts of race is not determined racial bias was not a foregone conclusion. It was not until the juridical opposition became mapped under hereditary in 1661. The planters still prefer white Indians to live in the conflict of free Indian servants was that they faced barriers to getting Indian land because of the elite planter class. Bacon's rebellion would begin to conflict with the Indian tribes viewed as obstructionists to settle colonial expansion. Bacon's demands to free to massacre all Indians were not accepted as Bacon rallies troops against Berkeley. Scholars romanticized the rebellion as a historical moment in which Africans and Europeans united to fight exploiters. Thus, the rebellion is a genealogy of whiteness. What drops out is what they were allied and challenging English elites through their united form to commit genocide against indigenous people. The rebellion hastened racial lines after Bacon's rebellion pledged to turn Africa as a primary source of labor. African races constructed to challenge the universal claim Afro-pessimists hold. Bacon's rebellion offers one example in which blacks exercise capacity over another group. This is challenge the timeline the world and claims to show the interpreted black experience in claiming Ontological testing historically, while disavowing that the real loss of real lines of politics between Africans and indigenous peoples, Bacon rebellion offer the counterpart denials and the challenge of ontological absolutism movements open. Space for interconnected radical political projects and political ontology is a basis for critique. Pay gives way to social weightlessness FYIs that ignore and devalue lived experience. Problem-driven approaches to structural inequality that denaturalize lived oppression are key to avoid solipsistic, internally propelled ontological counts. McNay 17. Ontology lessons in social witnesses theorizes that forecloses social power apparent. It's sufficient attention paid to the particular limit of repression structure of equality and equality taken to bodies and lived as seemingly natural decision experience is always mediated through path that requires careful analysis between embodied reality and material and symbolic relations of political ontology and body. Self-identity close to theorizing the intellectual flight reification produces exclusionary ways of viewing the world important. Capacity for self-reflection is curtailed suspension of sociality. Insensibility is from an external standpoint that delivers an epistemic shock to its frictionless. Theoretical views arguments are propelled by internal necessary logic of ontology rather than ontological grounded theories remain close. Self-perpetuating paradigms. A prayer first approach continues to be important for it. Internet inequalities are deepening. It is important not to give up on the moment it seeks to answer the question not by identifying constituent dynamics of political being, but by scrutinizing social existence to dislodge appearance of its natural and revere contingency critically as problem rather than paradigm-driven rooted in social theoretical reviews of ontological abstraction chips away at the problems producing, as it gets to social critics who chips away the problems to present kind of that's the practical aim of unmasking domination to contributing to radical de-actualization of other was being experienced is always mediated through power and requires careful analysis between the embodied reality and the material and symbolic relations, political ontology of the embodied. Sophocles theorizing, mark the card there. The one I see forward the problem-based interdisciplinary model of education over immigration and policy that imparts advocacy skills and creates to be a better and more thoughtful people with the tools necessary to enter the real commons. 13 current research by pedagogical practice argue that we should teach about immigration problems and include engagement in learning and research that practices are demonstrated to improve skills, knowledge and understanding the encourage effective deliberation about immigration policy, understand the complexity of immigration and power, promote strong intellectual skills as well as social responsibility deliberation. Noticeable, like, I'm constantly surprised by how many my students know about the system. It helps the students develop communication, analytical problem solving, and demonstrated ability to apply knowledge skills in real world settings. The interdisciplinary approach or problem-based learning. These approaches could challenge students to integrate multiple ways to understand the complex interactions among forces at the center of disciplines. The strong interdisciplinary course could be organized around a central question like what should the United States do about immigrants who without legal status. Students should be challenged to analyze data, think about data, learn about different disciplines, approach the question, assess various proposals or solutions. What are the strengths? What are the potential consequences proposed? A solution themselves. How do they support the positions? Only when students apply what they're learning to actual problems that they come to see the value. Students reflect seeking to understand the complexity of immigration from a range of positions grounded in their experience in sequestration and immigration policy. Education contributes to the harms. Elemental 18. Immigration policy, the back of the public radar, the field of immigration law are required to distinct the practices have very little knowledge of the immigration law and its impenetrable regulations. Schools subject to two areas of criminal law is considered core. Immigration law is a subject that many not yet be considered sophisticated by the academically and not given attention to academics are not fully versed in immigration law. Distinction is becoming problematic in federal criminal prosecution now uses as border enforcement and rejection of objectivity leads to absolutism. The discussions that form an explanatory critique of the role is an essential part of any radical criticism. Jones 4. Objective social inquiry has an inherent tendency to be critical. Critical social inquiry does not manifest criticalness through self-proclaimed labels or sides with the principle through substantive critique of prevailing ideas. Objective knowledge constitutes explanatory critique ideas which provide a more accurate and adequate account of the way society structure can potentially inform effects to change social relations and account, which is objective will contradict ideas by implicitly criticizing them further. Flawed account of reality. Explanatory critique provides an alternative response to the relationship between knowledge and power instead of choosing protect on the basis of commitment to the principle we choose, based on conditions on the basis of which provide a better account of reality. This will inherently provide a strong critique. It's vital to remain so committed to objectivity and to the notion that the proper criteria for judging lies in what they say about the world, not whose ideas they are. Eurocentricity, therefore, a dual problem considering the authors and the content is not only the other who can and should elaborate the critique and important implications of objectivity is responsibility of Europeans and Americans just as much as non-Europeans class to decline as they are. Don't read the last card. Don't read it?
Yep.
Alright, we'll stop there. Cross-examination.
How does the 1AC solve for the material conditions you outline in the harms part of the plan?
Because after a court ruling, it is no longer possible or desirable for people to deport immigrants by using waivers to get them to sign
Cool.
their
So
rights.
how does the 1AC resolve the court ruling?
Result in a court ruling.
Are you asking how, like, me reading the 1AC leads to the court ruling happening?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I think the very last
entirety of the third section. would
Yeah, the
explain
very
why
last
they-
piece of evidence I read is actually particularly good in this question, or the second last piece of evidence I read, as well as the third one. The Elm evidence, as well as the Commons evidence, is specific to immigration law, and this is one of the problems that they've identified with students discussing immigration. They don't understand the particular details, and the way to get them to actually understand and be able to effectuate change in immigration law is
there's
this
no
particular solution.
question about
can I answer
that
this one?
via no, because I think
Yeah,
my
go
question
ahead.
is still here. That doesn't answer any of the arguments or reasons why this education is able to produce the material solvency mechanism that the 1AC outlined via plan text.
Hey.
So my question is, does the 1AC solve for the material conditions that you have outlined, yes or no?
Oh, you mean does the 1AC result in the court ruling?
impacts. Do you solve for the impact that you have outlined In the 1AC.
This debate round will not affect the deportations
All right,
about
thank you.
waivers.
All right,
No.
you can go back. Sekou.
Cool. Next question. On the impact is rampant racism, the Con 17 evidence. The evidence talks about the rhetoric that goes about immigrants, i.e., they are labeled as illegal aliens or they are labeled as rapists and criminals. How does the 1AC's plan result in a changing of that rhetoric within the status quo?
So specifically in that context, the rapists and criminals, the argument that Khan is making, that's the justification used to justify.
Right, and my question is, how does the
plan
1AC resolve that?
Makes it illegal for them to do it.
So it makes it illegal for people to call immigrants illegal aliens?
We would not claim that we resolve some sort of rhetoric.
Perfect. Next question.
Your deportation. It's the rhetoric that justifies
next
the law.
question.
Yeah.
Your evidence about deportation due process rights solves argument. It says that it solves 50% of the time. What the fuck happens to the other 50% of immigrants?
Well, that's a whole 50%, and it's pretty unethical to say that they don't deserve it.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit.
So then what happens to the other 50%?
Every one of them get
is my
deported rather
question.
than doing nothing.
Right, it feels like
Okay, and then my question is, how does the court determine which 50% are actually?
that's not the court doesn't determine that. That's
Okay,
not
so
at all
what-
how that
so
works.
It's not legally
even
only
while you're
50% of you
laughing,
don't
could
get deported.
Could you explain the process? Because
Yeah,
I don't think the
absolutely.
1AC
I can
is
take this one.
outlined.
Yeah, sure, go for
Okay, sure. Plea waivers prevent an immigrant from contesting a deportation in immigration courts. The card about 50% says that immigration courts result in half less deportations. So the plan extends protection for immigration courts to...
So the 1AC resolves 50% of the harms.
That sounds wonderful to me, yes.
Okay, perfect.
50% of all deportation is stopped.
So you solve 50% of the 1AC. Cool. The second part
Well,
of
the
the
1AC is
so
huge.
Brian 12, right. So the Brian 12 evidence. You say that interim-based concrete actions are key to address infrastructural questions. What's the warrant for this argument?
Yeah, I think your last question is a pretty damn good example of this. You're like, if we can't solve 100%, why give a shit? Brian's argument is that sort of academic navel-gazing of, can we ever solve 100% if not do nothing, is sort of that justifies 100% instead of 50% of people staying in
That's fine. The
deportation
order's the case.
in indefinite detention in border
Run prep
courts.
real quick.
Okay.
Doesn't that first assume that you actually solve for the material conditions of the 1AC?
Debate is an
We don't
iterative
have-
process.
thank
We
you.
don't have to solve 100%. We should do what we
don't
can when we
solve
can,
anything.
rather than giving
Stop
up. and throwing
prep.
hands up in the
Run
air.
it up.
Can I get a timer? Does anyone have
All
a
yours. Have I gotten it yet?
Nah, I'm not sending it.
Okay.
You don't have a pin that's not blue.
Oh yeah, I got you. Hey, Sekou. I have each of the three sections floated on different sheets. What would the order be on them?
Straight down.
Okay.
Just like in a real debate, you should never upload your intake before. Yeah, student handouts, and then refresh the page. And then under the LD policy round, which is compost like
I just spilled a little water on my computer. That's not good. Okay.
the 1NC doc is in the drive.
Cool. Is anyone not ready?
Give him a second.
Did you play off?
Yeah, you should have it. Change it.
There it is. Cool.
I was like, I think I see it.
I'm good now.
I am also good.
You good, Darius?
For many in this place, we come to understand debate as that persuasive communicative activity, but in order for that to be true, you must first disavow the truth about a particular form of thought, and not only should practice of its ability to speak and suffering, which is integral for the ability of persuasive, but also its ontological integrity to exist on an equal playing field for the true metaphysical entry to be recognized, symbolized, or communicated, or be it has to be plunged into the black abyss. We have three immediate questions. 1, can you hear Black Shadow? 2, how can the shadow speak back? 3, how can the shadow know about itself? While we may never create a complete grammar suffering, the shadow of Vader Brown, a shadow that does not care about the uniqueness of a name, but the non-uniqueness of black flashes as its shade of red reverberates in society like an orchestra sounded room. This incoherent shadow of black life within death is where we choose to descend. It's where we choose to descend when posed with this has to respond to the affirmative. That's ready. It's 12. Anna Brown, also named the crackhead by the officers that arrested her, went to the hospital after spraining her ankle, was arrested because she refused to leave and found and was found up in the prison floor because she sprayed positions. She's blood cause Anna passed away away along the floor of her prison. So yet that last substance was the Charlie Sheen, that's where Anna Brown was murdered by subjectivity itself. Her death was caused by the incoherence of her voice. Her calls her screams of agony. She was murdered by civil society's inability to hear her being. The violence that produces the subject across Anna Brown of vocality, the etymological root of the communicates logic of the concept community. Of community communication requires an equal ontological status amongst the communicators. Anna Brown, as the census slaves, has no home, while the doctors are in her own dominion. Even though the black associate, that does not signify that black life is non-existent. Instead, are such that signifies that black life is sealed off from the what it happens elsewhere, underground or in outer space or suffering. It's inaudible, but her voice can only be heard by the police. The challenging the law of resisting, restless respecting their authority. Her voice can only be heard as a legitimizing force for their false process was a non-event concealed from the what the prince. Anna Brown was murdered by a disparate set of non-events where her body shuttled to in a hospital and a prison. Doctors and nurses, police officers, and prison officials. There is no one who killed her instead of structural violence, murdered her. No intimacy, just codependency. There are no values without understanding temporality. All events occur within time with the birds ground for ethical discussion. The one seeking constructive future as an ontological form distinct from the status quo with their imagination, just articulation, and a not yet maybe to come social order, which expands racism of white supremacy through the normalizing of justice future. That's still in 13. Progress based reform our temporality used by states justify any response by the state describe the features as a space for safety to maintain balance of the president to determine the range of those who refuse to wait for the futures as possible to talk about the complete abolition of sexual violence. It's a question of a gradual move toward something. This is a notion history with the past child washes away the thoughts so that in the future is free from the orders of past question as a space for radical alterity to the progress of the future for the editors future. The revolution will be free from racialized gender violence because reform says future to John Scratch will undo the courts of defense for those where the run of white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, the past, present, the future are not distinct temporal spaces. The past is the image of the future because the future so will be the repetition of the past. As Verkima argues, time does not pass and accumulate. The past return to the present, the return to the present is transformed within a non-secret array of past times. What was begun does not end, but it testifies so that even though the captive flesh house bodies will liberate the ruling episode that lists the dynamics of the naming and the valuations remains grounded in originated metaphors of captivity and mutilation of that time nor history show movement and their contingent analysis or humanistic studies cannot incorporate the black for blacks. It does not allow the political ontological necessities for black subjectivity to have ontological integrity, flinching on the question of anti-blackness and redirecting the question of alienation and exploitation. Wooderson, 03. How's your incoherence in the face of the historical access germane to our experience of being of a phenomenon without analog slavery to greater level of the black substance position of the black Americans does not generate historical categories for entitlement, sovereignty, and immigration from the record. We are often mapped with the stretch to the cartography that just beside the we have a past, but not a heritage to the data generating of the historical access. We present a virtual bluntness, place us in a structurally impossible position that one that's outside the articulation of generally, however, it also places generally in a structurally impossible position because this is key. Our presence works back on the grammar of hegemony and third within incoherence or other body function in the imaginary, the symbolic, or the real. So completely as a repository of complete disorder as the black body blocks inside the absolute jurisdiction level of the real for and is maximizable as black body functions as the metaphorical issues about which suicide is possibly it's possible, namely those rights for which violence or can be contingent blacks inside the absolute jurisdiction level. It is an experience without analog, the past without heritage blacks inside of absolute jurisdiction level. The imaginary for whoever says race is black, Fanon says whoever says princess says black, and whoever says ace is black. That section the Negroes are phonogenic is a phobogenic object. If we are to be honest with ourselves, we must admit that the Negro has been dividing rights as well as the civil society junior partners who dance for social justice for hundreds of years. But if you have wanted to learn this stuff, they have been remained today, even in the most anti-racist movement, like the prison abolition movement invested. Ultimately, does not say that all that is all oppositional. Political desire today is pro-white, but it is usually anti-black, meaning it will not deal with that black liberation process makes radicalism more dangerous to the U.S. This is not because of racism. The question of alternative politically, such as socialism or community control of just reasons, but because it's the conditions of possibility and just of resistance function as a negative dialogue to politics, refuse and refusal to reform a program of completely disorder. One must embrace it in disorder. Its coherence and allowance to be elaborated by its indeed once politics are to be underwritten by a desire to take down this own country. What are this movement's thoughts of political accountability? There's nothing foreign, frightening, or even a practice about the embrace of disorder, incoherence, marked guard, incoherence, and anti-blacks and skies. The libidinal economies, the phobogenic objects of creativity, and creates a semiotic field of relationality, and 18 thus Wooderson 11. Black political ontology is foreclosed and unconscious just as it is foreclosed in the court. It is an absence haunted by it's an other negativity in this respect. The memory loss it's only possible. Communication loss indicates a prior plenitude. We have wandered over the black model as a phobic object that we might form from a psychic community. This phobia is comprised of affective responses, sensory reactions are pre-subjective constellations of intensity, and this affective representational performance underwritten by paradigmatic Fonto said that the fantasy serves its objectivity because it lends within to personally describe the eradication of generative mechanisms of black suffering would be the end of the world, and they would find themselves appearing into the best between epistemesis, directly too iconoclastic for working class post-colonial and or radical feminist conceptualization frame of the human need be liberated in a world that's not the same as the black need to be liberated from the world, which is why even their most radical cognitive natural borders be to living in the dead. And now here we are approaching the end of the one. The glaring question still remains: what was the point? Maybe the point was that there was no point. Maybe the point was to stop trying to pretend like debate could be political, or that we could do anything at all without forsaking black bodies. The point was not anything affirmative. In fact, it was the anti-affirmative. It was the pure negation that doesn't ask you to judge whether or not the affirmative is a good idea, but it says asks you to realize the absurdity in trying to judge them at all. What rubric of evaluation, what value system, what existential reason exists that is not anti-black in a rule by a pre-existing racial social order? We think the answer is that there isn't one except to refuse to evaluate the affirmative at all. 115. The politics of person metaphysical structure that sustain black suffering. Politics is about with the metaphysical violence and response masquerades and solutions from the anti-black and temporal terms for linear perfection, betterment, struggle, work, and futurity are conceptual instruments of the political that will never obviate black suffering or anti-black violence. These concepts only serve to reproduce the conditions that render existence unbearable for black optimism, avoiding a immediacy of black suffering, the core of anti-black polarization, of place relief in a not yet, but maybe it's a social order that itself can do little more, but admonish blacks to survive to keep struggling. The black optimists propose a collective Jewish process and answer to black suffering, finding the joy and struggle, the victory and toil, and the satisfaction in efficacy in efficacious action. We continue to struggle. Workers, black youth are slaughtered daily. These conditions are deep metaphysical problems. Displeasure, metaphysical domination, work and struggle. Avoid the terrifying fact that the world depends on black death. Genesis of black downloads and sensitive relations. The coins at the political hope, swelling black suffering is an essential part of the war and places of the very structure that sustains metaphysical violence. The political will never resolve anything. This is black what that will ultimately end in metaphysical by putting in into metaphysics will put an end to the word stuff. This is the line. This is the nihilism that the black nihilist must theorize through the black nihilist offers political posse as a spiritual practice of denouncing metaphysical violence, black suffering, and the idea of anti-blacks. The act of renouncing will not change political structures or offer political programs. That it's the act of retrieving the spiritual concept of hope from the capacity of the political. Ultimately, it is impossible to end metaphysics without ending anti-black systems. Black nihilists will never be able to withdraw from the political completely without it being towards that. This is the essence of black suffering, the lack of pride from metaphysics, the tormented capacity, and the reproduction of violence, and lack of coherent grammar to articulate these dilemmas. Ultimately, we must hope for the end of political hope. I'm going to read another card. I'll send it in an email and group there. Afro-pessimism and Dutch as a theorization of power, bypass the grammar of the slave and disavows the assumed humanistic gender, grammar of the agential and relational capacity of the 1616 controversy. The controversy company the rich of this discourse. You suffered greatly from refusal to follow the Jameson to his theoretical aim and rejecting the critical purchase and affect renaissance of a highly tactical defeat in a small corner of academia of American Academy has most likely to do with a growing understanding of the common political conditions of the first black board bound to terrifying acknowledgement of the geocentric and symbolic continuities post emancipation societies throughout the diaspora, but also the unconceivable categorical swirl of impactful transformation. The names of racial slavery, Afro-pessimism, provoking a base rethinking among non-black counterparts, struck never among others who fear that open-minded engagement involves forsaking the hardened lessons of the last generation. Afro-pessimism is thought to be a negative appraisal of the capabilities of black people, a denial of overlapping ongoing histories or the struggles and a fatal misunderstanding of dynamics of power, reifying what should be historicized and root to analysis that superimposes the figure of a slave as an anarchist onto ostensibly post-slavery societies and so on. Mark the card at on.
I can't find it. I'm sorry. Could you point it to me? I don't know. There are like so many.
Is that an extra document?
Yeah. Don't worry, I got you. I'm just. I'm sorry. I just.
Yeah, I gotta find the right on.
Is it right here? This one right here? And so on. Please love your choice society and so on. Okay, thank you.
Alright, we got classics?
Yep.
Alright, so if debate as a site does not have the ability to change the external world, what is the value of inserting the 1 and C scholarship into the debate round?
Negating the affirmative.
Yeah,
Alright, but the affirmative also does nothing, so you negated something that did nothing. Why do you win?
because I mean, the argument here is that then vote negative on presumption.
Okay, so to be clear, you don't have offense. You're just like, we have pretty decent defense, and we're going to go for 0% risk of the F.
I think that's a miscue of what the negative is. Our argument, like, i.e., all of our link arguments that function as epistemological dispatch for reasons why the framework that sustains the 1AC is flawed.
Wait,
Even
but
furthermore,
if the F doesn't spill over or change the way people view the world, why would it matter if we have a bad framework?
So I think our argument is like in two ways. One, if you it's an even if claim. So one, you vote negative on presumption because the app doesn't do anything. But even if we lose that argument, right, and we assume
you can only access your own offense if we also spill over, because your link is like the app effectuating change is bad.
I mean, technically, yeah, that's how debate functions.
Okay.
I don't know, like you
fine
made
to
a
me.
1AC.
All right.
Like, we have negated that. That's the purpose of the negative.
The Dylan evidence says that
fair.
the problem with notions of progress or claiming that we change a little at a time is that it assumes that the future is eventually going to be rid of all violence. Why is that true of the affirmative?
That's not the argument at all. The argument is that you attempt to separate yourself from the past to even evoke a political trajectory toward progress.
For the
Our argument
editors,
is that
future
you
of the
can
revolution will be
even
free from
change-
racialized and gendered
Right,
violence.
huh? I don't think what?
I'm reading a line from the card. For the editors, the future of the revolution will be free from racialized and gendered violence.
Yes, that
Dylan's
argument
claim
is
is that
specific in the context of a specific article that was talking about a white feminist white feminist
Yeah, I agree.
scholarship that were saying that statistics prove that things are getting better, right?
Yes, but
This
the
argument
criticism
is
that Dylan leveraged of
metaphorically,
that
right?
article was that it
this
assumed it would eventually solve 100%. Given our own
that's
cross-exit
not
discussion, the app has
argument.
never
The
said that.
argument
Why
is
does it
taken,
apply?
like, colloquially, dude, just like the argument is assuming, like, colloquially speaking, right? Arguments or sort of like political trajectories begin to assume that they are even able to solve for forms of violence that the world can get better in the first place. That is
Okay,
the
so we
main
can't ever say
claim.
anything
You
gets
can't
better,
just
not just
take
that everything
one
gets
part of the article out of context and then just be like, oh yeah, this is what the
Well, it's the
entire
part you
claim is saying,
highlighted,
right?
so if that's a bad context, I
Right.
think that's on you. But I have a new
Because you
question.
only- yeah, but
Your
that's like
We'll
Brady
move on.
evidence-
We understand you. We understand
Your
We
Brady
understand your
evidence
answer. We're
says
good. We'll move on.
It is impossible to understand through communication black suffering, and it cites an example, Anna Brown. How would one falsify this notion of communication? Would we offer a counterexample where some communication led to a change in black suffering?
No, you can just provide an argument to reason why, like, communication theory and dialogue is able to
Oh, they're
function
going for
and hear,
wording.
and hear the black
So,
screen.
I have a question.
Right?
I have a question about that as well.
It's like
What
a
is the
dissent to, like,
threshold?
communication theory
Yeah,
bad.
so what is the threshold for like sort of totalizingly problematizing something like communication? Like, does one example meet your threshold for making
I mean,
such a
no,
claim?
like, no, I don't think that. Well, yes, like I think the 1NC provides multiple examples, right? And I think our argument is like not just about a contingent form of violence, right?
Do
Even
those
the
examples
Brady
spill
evidence is
over
right,
to
but
other
rather
areas in
our
which you have
argument-
not provided examples?
Yes, this is why we provide a structural analysis of like. the way
Okay,
that
so do
violence
examples in areas where you do not provide examples sort of flip back?
Like, I don't know what that question
does that
means.
So
Like,
if-
our argument is a structural analysis of how blackness functions. This contingent analysis shouldn't be understood as a
Is it-
singular
is
instance
it
of
valuable
violence,
to
but
endorse
rather
the negative
as a
scholarship?
constant murdering of subjectivity
What does that
itself,
mean?
because there is no uniqueness to this murder, right? Anna Brown functions as Tamir Rice. Anna Brown functions as like Trayvon Martin. Anna Brown functions as Sandra Bland, because this is a constant repetition, repetitious form of violence that occurs that does not just like kill someone but murder subjectivity itself from blackness, as they are barred from even having the capacity to have agency in relationships to the world, which is exactly our argument, which is why I'm just like, you're taking all of our arguments out of context, which is why our Brady evidence is talking about communication is impossible, and this is a prime example of how then black thought becomes locked into an echo chamber because you cannot understand.
Cool.
But you can come with your next question.
What was it? The first one was Brady? Alright, we're good.
I know.
No prep.
Oh, no prep? Never mind.
No. It'll be the third page of the 1AC, Comans and down, the Afropest index of the 1AC, and then every card they read in order.
Alright, cool.
I will email this thing out. It is quite long. I'm not certain if I will get through all of it, but I will let you know.
Yeah, we'll see.
I guess. Certainly. Okay, it has been sent.
Oh boy.
Can I have my timer, Sekou?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you plug that thing in? Right?
Yeah. I wonder if there's a better place to. No, I guess it won't work. Here, mine is very long. Oh, no, mine wouldn't fit in yours. So let's say, like, mine. See, like, this thing's so big.
You can change out the extension cords. Right, or reviews in general don't need to.
Here, one sec. How much battery do I have? Okay, so good. Let me do this.
Sorry, LZ.
Or are you just gonna take it off?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. No, I'm gonna take mine and then put it into yours. I hope it works.
Yeah, it works. I did that.
Tell me if it turned on.
Yeah. You're
Awesome. Yeah, I have like 100, so I was like, wait. Okay.
Alright, come on. I just be laughing. It'd be funny.
Okay.
Wait, hold up. Okay.
Alright.
Okay, I'm good.
Is anybody not ready? Excellent. Plea waivers ensure non-citizens can't contest deportation. The plan bans those bargains and solves empirics proof they conceded that always won is material of theory. I dare to look me in the face and tell me that psychoanalytic theory means that USFG should split families apart, denying the validity of the plan because the risk of a problem with scholarship is irresponsible. 2. Winning the affirmative disproves the case because it's possible to confront violence in the context of the affirmative examples and other areas too. 3. Winning our theories inextricably tied to the impacts of the case. We test whether inclusion in some structure is good based on the benefits we get using that instance versus this. That means you get to where the case our interpretation of scholarship is a decent or debate is a research committee where we iteratively debate over political student which teaches us things or common evidence says problem-based testing over some hypothetical scenario like a plan is necessary to develop critical thinking skills, real world knowledge, attitude skills, and better engagement. It outweighs 1 answers and turns only given to the status about a policy by this activity just way learning about it in a way that is beneficial. 2. It bolsters the permutation, if you can call it that. It calls for an interdisciplinary model of education independently prioritizing academic theories and theorization because the case doesn't solve enough. It's unethical. Delgado 9. The critique of reform is wrong in a quarter to direct authority to respond to heating and housing made post-war revolution. The order keeps families around this mean more to the desire of the comfortable academic and more office tax. The paternalist or surplus to the revolution later outweighs the heat and incremental changes made. Revolutionary change goes not a lot as well as reforms induce complacent critique of reform as these possibilities. The one it sees educational process turns their state bad arguments. Williams 70 to Rooney's one that isolated comes out of institutions self-imposed isolation by the revolutionary movement is a great for remote justified use of revolution to become acquainted with the methods of pressure change more theory effective of pressure within way contain valuable know-how effective struggle with tactical plan analysis highly sophisticated applications. Skipping the Taylor card going to the Avropres preempts debate. I'll extend a couple of them and then answer their section 16 evidence. First is a spade evidence. Reformism isn't reform, rather we have a broader understanding that things are generally possible. We use reformism in the one to see scholarship to understand the broader intricacies of things. For example, you have to know what immigration courts are, what plea waivers functions, what states these plea waivers occur in. If you want to militantly fight back against that or have some sort of notion in the first place, only the debate's iterative process teaches the nuances of things instead of general broad hierarchizing claims, which the one to see resolves. And it is a question of scholarship production, which means if we win that theirs is bad, you should vote affirmative. The counter evidence, it says that totalizing or articulating practice as a master signifier all oppression leads you to paper over genocide because you can just rewrite history in whatever way fashion you want. For example, during Fagin's rebellion, black people joined with white people in order to enact functionally genocide onto Native Americans, but this was papered over by Wilderson into structural analysis, even though this was prior to the institutionalization of the things that codified anti-blackness in Virginia in the first place. It allows you to ignore history. The McNay evidence, they were just an interesting FYI about anti-blackness in communication, but never do anything to resolve those issues in the first place. If they win that the 1AC is insufficient, then the 1NC should be insufficient too, which means if we win that theory bad, it is a reason to vote affirmative, or you can vote affirmative, on the risk of offense. Now, their arguments. The first piece of evidence they read the Brady card first. View the political as contingent instead of a closed system. The existence of anti-blackness doesn't imply irreversibility and black resistance. Throughout history, disproves social death. Gordon 17. Beings live in a world they also construct the producer of a reality of humans and being in the making human world is never completed relations. The anti-black world is not identical with the world is anti-black. The world is anti-black. It's anti-racial products. It's not historical human limitations from parents black people and other opponents. Fought to continue to fight the same applies to the argument you would have to render. These religions still burn the place of promises are reluctant performative contradictions yet rhetorical force. The pessimism, the outside of options of better naturalism, rejecting evidence pessimism. There's an alternative political commitment. The slave revolts and micro resistance, escape returns, instability, plantations, countless other actions were waged against forces done to eliminate any hope after pessimism. There's a kind of failure, to understand failure, a constructive failure where they initially worked as a transform condition, atomistic individual models, kind of non-relational being after alternative models of relational virtue. The each human being is a constant negotiation to get a reversible relationship with others, meaning no one enters the year without establishing action and meaning. Numerous so-called failures transform relationship. The hatred revolution, every act of resistance, Nat Turner, Sharp, tools, and so many to come. The narrative of no progress is affectively appealing, just like all of their sort of ethos moments in cross-sex, but historically imprecise. Major gains have been achieved in the political implications of their ethic are throwing out the possibility of less violence, less humanizing future around the world. We're not 15. An odious stink pile of shit has been accumulated. Anti-racist accomplishments have reduced us as a massive style remains. Yet racial policy, unstable racism, that's we're
negative stabilized historical movements where but inevitable sheer weight up, it becomes insupportable race and becomes formidable less. The whole story large scale shifts it overtaking the model racial system undermining reality during and after the war. A breaker current size shifts is otherwise a whole range of new social movements from explicit racial less specific to racial boxing presently we believe the demands anti-dimension democratic upsurges this included civil rights, anti-apartheid, the anti-colonial movement also included second wave feminism, gay liberation, and others movements to reduce the demographic, economic, political, and cultural service destruction of European empires coming into ruining of the Cold War, the rise of the new social movements. The U.S. has only started selling much bigger worship studying and teaching now. The double race continues, yet the legacy of resistance on the achievements of anti-race and anti-imperial circles, the extension of democracy are sustained political force, racism, freedom, dreams sustain the vote of democracy, inclusion, equity, and justice. Empirics prove historical progress. The 13th, 14th Amendments, brotherhood of sleeping car porters, mass social movements, BLM fights for a single payer, J. Oral, Davis's project for the Klan, the enforcement act, TSEC were all good things. They weren't perfect, but it's unethical to say they were wrong because that also proves that they shut down black people who are working to create change because they comfortably say nothing matters. Framing issue on the ontology debate, risk calculus, burden of proof is on them, and all we have to do is poke one hole in their theory. Remember, if we're wrong, the permutation or doing the affirmative doesn't result in that much anti-blackness, but if they're wrong, the alt causes infinite racism and sentences millions of black people to physical death. It's Pascal's wager, 1% risk of progress means if we're affirmative, the time argument, the Dylan evidence, their conception of time is problematic, prefer methodology, pragmatic political action, this key to any change of method of right policy. Let's go Beveridge 15. The focus on the past marginalized claims of victims become terror becomes realistic and give us those to choose between restitution for historical injustice and struggle for justice in the present and the future. We should look for types of rational policies on the best emancipatory elements of the past, present, future policies. Some of the rational policies tend to have a very limited immature reproduction for the purple mechanism can be highly problematic. They have an understanding of time that says that today is literally no different from chattel slavery. Even if they win a broader claim about a structure, their structure justifies that claim, which means they have to back it up in the block, and I do not think they will be able to do so independently. This notion of time doesn't dispute any sort of institutional progress. Things like Obergel versus Hedges, like kind of Supreme Court ruling and the Supreme Court ruling of the affirmative would still be good things, and there's no ethical way to deny those things. The humanism link argument, anti-humanism is just advanced humanism, the latter is the root of anti-blackness contest, key Lester 12. It was not humanism that gave rise to the ages of anti-humanist politics of settlers. We can learn from humanist universalism, and in practice we must not forget that humans alternatives have the potential to do worse. Planners emphasize the incorrelated difference in upholding determinism, upholding restriction can result in a racially oppressive action depending on the contingent policy specific assemblages. Humanism was a real contradiction for all the particular the varying possibilities. Attention was universalism, the potential was provisional, flexible, strategic humanism versus we're not universal to combat the impacts of the gender market. What do we do to introduce human to be redefined and make necessary political freedom? Also, humanism is necessary to define some sort of political interaction. For example, violence against black queer people, black women, and black men are all operate on different registers, even if the same structure justifies them. At the interpersonal level, you cannot say that all of them are flesh or there is no distinction between them. Only humanistic descriptors allow us to sort of contingently explain those issues, which proves that humanism is valuable. Their theory literally says that all black people in the United States are nothing but sort of flesh, which is absolutely unethical, and humanistic descriptors are still necessary to have some sort of explanatory critique independently. Even if their structure is right, it doesn't mean we should stop education over policy. Wilderson 16. Political education, Black Lives Matter, this concept of transforming political organizing, help us get relief from we can educate ourselves to be against institution against the United States while working to reform police practice because we don't have the strength in the 1970s action of the revolutionary motive without like a strange academic orientation we don't feel except the police has used that space for an anti-Egyptian but sounding anti-American even if we have to work for reforms. The libidinal economy argument, framing issue, they need this argument to win the ontology. They can't kick it, otherwise there's nothing intrinsic to civil society that necessitates anti-blackness. Studies prove racial biases are malleable through institutional states. Sakara and Van Bove 15. Research has shown the remarkable ease which humans form correlations to preference, preference, Democrats, Republican affair, those divisions of the party much more than the rest. To respond to the human membership rather than race or membership changes the membership whenever race. Flexible nature offers reason because to bring multiple groups together around a common goal. The sense of cohesion can increase empathy, have a responsibility, reduce prejudice. We, as individuals, possess this capacity. Collective action, institutional evolution can address racism, prejudice, and discrimination are not inevitable consequences of our biology. Skip the next card. Unconscious bias exists, but it's not a libidinal economy or a specific social cultural value system. Who does 16? Actually, no. Skip that card too. The splits in their monolithic analysis disproves that desires can change. Johnston 5. Despite bleakness as an assessment nature is proved by inner antagonism, there is a liberating aspect to this. Contradiction arises from the conflicts internal libido. How do you mark that precise space where freedom has a chance to flash into existence? Such dress killer space that certain emergencies other than the continuation of the evolve. One of the things now, the last argument about negating everything, ontological fatalism flattens black experience, which is dehumanizing and shuts off resistance. Klein in 17. Absolute privatization of ontological frame of hierarchy, epistemology, accurate ends up limiting possible avenues of analysis. The absolute privileging of macropolitical tends to every politics and micropolitics relates black being in a singular position, short codes, and analysis that might reveal not how the practice apparatus, racism, develop and change and resolve despite the Wilderson claim these things only mystify the questions really have implications for how positioning a soul and resistance. Wilderson flattens out social difference, and even a social field of 35 million black people flattening T-limits, violating demilitarized system. Another disadvantage to their negation alternative. Their social death thesis is wrong and violent, furthers the project of white supremacy, political community. Gordon 18.
Black people never socially dead. The project was to make us socially dead. Why don't we count our relation to each other as socially alive? People try to define human being as closed open to beings or possibilities. You cannot be pessimistic or optimistic without a relationship of knowing that's epistemological. Imagine the people who fought when and knowledge offering was everything you will use. Let's say political action is fundamentally premised on the commitment. Pessimism and truth for those kind of questions. But you're going to talk about black liberation. What you need is commitment. I'm going to read that Hooters card that I said I wasn't going to read, but I will read it now. Cool. Racism is not an integral part of the human psyche in the effort to comprehend racism, but some part of the structure to be the edible collective unconscious, doomed to failure. The collective unconscious refer to the inherent products that exist in all regardless of specific and bringing if undenied solutions are on permanent features of their mind. Their habits required from social control and population, where they constitute the collective unconscious of many people, not a universal code who uses habits with instinct. Socioeconomics are responsible for affective disorders. Racism cannot be solved by psychological levels in individual problems. Social one discipline is sure to achieve only things materials not resume their rightful place. Cross.
The We Not 15 evidence, can we get some warrants for this progress good claim?
Every historical example cited in the card is a warrant.
You want to explain something?
Yeah, sure. So I think the examples underneath it sort of prove that things are continually better now. So Obergefell versus Hedges was a good Supreme Court decision that no one could ethically deny should not have happened.
Why?
Because it sort of increased the validity of gay people to be able to marry each other. Those things are good, even if they do not resolve the
Why is interracial contact good?
Well, it is kind of silly. The Williams evidence sort of actually turns us. Yeah. So, can I explain?
I know, but I'm just kind of like questioning the things that you say after it comes out. I'm not stopping your question. I'm just pointing things out. But go ahead.
Okay. Sounds good. So the Williams evidence says that attempting to isolate oneself from the institutions around them is sort of an impossible thing to do. For example, it seems kind of difficult for black people to go about. It seems kind of difficult for black people to go around in the United States without ever interacting with someone who's not black.
In the context of interracial contact, that is just a broad claim that doesn't answer the question. Why is interracial contact good? You just made an argument to reasons why that black people shouldn't be able to can't necessarily avoid.
If it's inevitable, it proves that attempts to reform it should be made.
Is interracial contact or interracial desire inevitable?
The argument above proves that it would be slightly difficult for one to live in the United States.
Even if it's slightly difficult, why does that mean it's inevitable?
That was sort of just me qualifying things. If it is the case that it is extremely difficult to exist within the United States without interaction.
Next question. The permutation. The Williams 70 evidence says that the permutation is to do both and infiltrate institutions.
That is not what I said in the 2AC because y'all didn't read it all. So I just said something. I said the 1AC's educational project turns their arguments. Well, not one that I can make a permutation against that would make any sense.
So the warrant. Where does it explain or justify that when it says militants should become acquainted with the methods of the oppressor? Why does that mean that you have to defend a policy? Why can't you critique policies and get the same type of education?
I think the content of the 1AC versus the 1NC is the best example of this. For example, the 1AC had a lot of specific claims about immigration courts, the states in which these plea waivers exist, the specific forms of violence that occur because of them, which is a better iterative educational process than broad structural critique prevents us from accessing the sort of...
No. We have specific links to the 1AC. My question is...
my argument is not about... My argument is not that you were generic. My argument is that the argument you made is
that the 1AC is kind of just a broad structuring question about...
Why do I assume that the 1NC is a broad structuring question? Yep. Are you willing to admit that it's not? Because we would love for you to do that.
Wait, that didn't...
Please admit that the 1NC is not a structural analysis right now. I would please do that.
That didn't answer my question, though.
You asked why we think the 1NC is a broad structural analysis. If you do not think so, I would be happy to concede that claim.
You still haven't answered the question.
We can start cross 6. It don't even matter. Really.
You're running crap.
Yeah, run it up.
Okay.
Hey, let me see. Go to this Klein over here real quick. You see the struggle of no space? Oh, alright, I got it.
The title of the there are multiple arguments after you read hard, then it doesn't provide enough. Because the next card will be just as long. Exactly.
I didn't read that Taylor card on the scholarship page, by the way. Just letting y'all know.
Yes, it's constructive.
Did we do one of theirs?
So remember, this is the wrong boundary. Policy said twins equal and the one in our goes very close to so it's considered one
All right, so what has just happened are the first 3 constructive speeches. What will occur now is known as the negative block, which means Darius will stand up and give the 9-minute 2NC. There will be another 3 minutes of cross-ex following that, and then Sekou will give the 6-minute 1NR. So the negative will speak twice in a row, and then we'll move into the rebuttal speeches. Up until this point, are there any questions that you have for either the affirmative or the negative debaters about the arguments or strategies or even some of the cross-ex questions that occurred in this round? And I know that there are questions because I can hear every single person asking the person next to them, what did you get about this argument? So feel free to ask the debaters who are actually making the arguments about this, about what you're interested in. None? I promise it'll help you, yeah.
So what exactly is the NC advocacy?
So,
It seems like oh.
You read this Sakara and Babel card, right? I'm almost.
I did read that one.
The strategy of the 1NC is to refuse to evaluate the 1AC.
To refuse to evaluate the 1AC.
That's also what we said.
Which is why they're going to lose this debate.
Is there any other questions? I promise it is a valuable learning opportunity. Yeah.
Why does it matter if the 1NC is a structural analysis?
Would any of you like to take this question?
Because many of the disadvantages that the 2AC read relies on that structural analysis being very anti-black. But the reason I was happily willing to concede that it wasn't a structural analysis, because if it isn't, then I think you should just like auto-vote AF, because if there's no structural analysis, there's no reason that the AF is a bad idea. Like, none.
You mentioned something in your last speech about a perm, and then you clarified in cross that, like, since they didn't read it all, you can't really perm it. Like,
So,
can you clarify that?
yeah, the 2AC almost said perm, and then just made the argument as a reason to vote AF, because...
Okay.
Okay, never mind.
Well, you can finish it.
Yeah, you can still finish.
Oh yeah, cool.
Okay, future note, ask them lots of questions while I'm prepping for the 2AR. Anyway, I
I
think
don't need to prep. I'm actually not even still in prep.
No, I'm just joking. Sorry, what was the question about? One of the cards I wanted to read was tagged as a perm because it's typically a perm card, but their alt is like negate everything. So I just read it as a reason why the F scholarship is good because the card says that political education is good. What did you just read? What did you just write?
Yeah, I'll send out some.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. It's actually very useful.
Don't want to give away all of it. Good job, Ishan. What was it? Darius slave right free.
This is not structural.
It's not a good argument.
Alright, I'm saying it right now.
Alright. So, hey Darius, FYI, Darius, do you know how I read like a bunch of cards on every card y'all read? I have them all filled out as separate sheets, so if you want to go like, tell me straight down on the stuff you read, or the stuff I extended.
On the stuff that I'm finna get up real quick and I'll
Okay, yeah, I'll just listen. Thank you though. I just wanted to clarify.
I'm gonna signpost every single.
Yeah, no, I believe you. Don't worry. Okay, this framework argument should not be we get to the framework argument should just be like debate over it. That's disgusting.
Like the time.
No, that's a good idea, I think. I will write down every answer to like the dump of ontology cards I read, and then I'll let you know which ones I want to go for based on the ones I think aren't answered well.
Alright, it's 6 now. I gave a little bit of the speech docs also too. I don't have no cards.
No cards?
Yeah, just straight warrants.
Alright.
I can borrow this, or do you need this?
No, all you.
Hey, does somebody else have an extra timer?
I do.
I would like it.
Alright, let me see it. No, you go with this. I like the small ones.
Alright. None.
Every time I give a speech, I gotta give a shout out to my family and everybody that helped me get to this point, because honestly and truly, I would not be here speaking if it really wasn't for them. So I always gotta shout out to the 318 and to Louisiana. The order will be like a slight overview. You can flow it straight down on the same case, if you floated one off, then just do whatever you want. Just float on that off sheet of paper or wherever you float this argument at. Then I'll go to the link page, alt page, and then it'll be line by line straight down. You finally get to see what I speak like.
My God,
Watch this. The code switch is real. I'm about to sound really professional. Ready? Yeah, it's about to be chopped. No slave, no world. The birth point of a journey begins at the prime of this vindication of black children. The disavowed continent Africa produces racialized slavery to function as the needed for reconfiguring society's norms of what it means to be human, created schema in the world for how we understand value, ethics, morality, subjectivity, and suffering in the playing field of desire, aka liberal economy. No world, no slaves. Simply put our argument is that the temporal domination of slavery is just a material object theft of the body, but also symbolic or ontological theft of being that functions through racializing the body, creating static carcasses of nothingness for black folks to occupy and place them outside of the concept of the human itself. Now, P game is this is just an accident or contingent form of political violence. The majority of the evidence would like to particularly talk about, especially that piece of Bell's evidence. But this evidence states that but our argument is that it's necessary to establish a pre-existing social order of meaning that we classify as society to engender black children at birth with statistics such as decreased lifespan, homelessness, sexual assault, poverty, and criminalization to generate coherency and vitality for the civil society link page. One voyeurism is that crushes prove that their speech has a result in solving the material conditions of the AC, which is the reason why you can just literally vote negative on presumption. But remember, no slave, no world, but also no slave, no persuasion. The very grammar of their speech act is parasitic and requires the conscious sacrifice of black immigrants so that the sociological analysis of contingent balance, aka the VBI18 evidence, the comments evidence that assumes that the affirmative can be solved with an affirmative ballot, but also even furthermore, they have shifted from the very notion of action, but to pedagogy between cross-black piece of war and evidence here as the normative attempts to impact calculus and scholarship function as a semantic fantasy to constantly reproduce images of suffering for shock value and assumes immigration populations as fungible objects in the playing field debate that locked into particular archetypes of inferiority, that ignore and reproduce conditions that create these forms of violence in the first place, and B produces moments of empathetic identification that is predicated upon projecting our fantasies upon their bodies to encapsulate, commodify, and literally dangle their suffering as a bargaining tool and platform for the political gender and liberal telos of actions to create an ethical/moral positioning of innocence in the world to justify and disavow our own libidinal investment in anti-blacks and the continuous ontological slaughtering of black folks in the status quo. Another impact is that their permutation never meets the grammar of the slave at the level of political ontology, becomes locked into an echo chamber, i.e. cross-sex, proves which always comes to the locked into an echo chamber of constant liberation, i.e. debate and the reactionary politics of the affirmative that ratchet down in the truth of the revolutionary potential of black thoughts as the alternative refusal to the quotidian nature of anti-black violence. Two, desperate impacts for non-citizens epistemically fostered the desperate impacts such as plea bargain sites at the ontological foundations of guilt that is always already ready to press and position particular bias and crime and proximity to criminality. One is see sovereignty mechanisms to solve for the nature of the problem, but to provide a contingent band-aid that is still parasitic upon understanding actions and ethics only after violence has been committed, which actually enters all of their Delgado evidence, as this argument assumes some form of one solvency, which we have disproved that you don't do shit, but also even furthermore that your ethics must be moral in the first place, which doesn't alleviate the effects of being incarcerated with the ontological conditions that allow for the magnetization of guiltiness itself upon the flesh and only creates a more efficient prison industrial complex, i.e. even if numerous amounts of folks are released via the plan, this ignores the criminal justice system state of surveillance, which requires things such as fingerprints, probation, and hyper surveillance of community they return to justify reincarceration for different crimes to get rid of civil society's demarcated partial contagion. This turns any impacted durable fiat as an argument that anti-blackness is the durable social force that guides modernity's decision making. Three, trick of time, the scholastic framework, the one they see is an intervention of their spade or Bernard evidence that attempt to separate themselves from the foundation of despicable past, i.e. their inherency invoke a fantasized political trajectory toward a post-racial future for cross-black piece of dividend evidence here. They literally don't have a specific answer to this as black children move linearly, but rather operation gratuitously. Simply put, they misunderstand that anti-blacks doesn't go away through time, but repetitiously haunts the society with the lack of movement from slavery to convict leaks of the Jim Crows to the prison industrial complex. Now, they may have an argument to why that our argument assumes that violence is the same or similar, but no, our argument is that violence changes the way in which it functions, but as it is something that is contingently antagonistic, but also even furthermore, the belief in biological futurity defers the confrontation with the social positioning of the black as not being creates a perverse form of pseudo-masochism where black folks invest in forms of cool optimism, find enjoying their death as we win victories in the political sphere that requires the slave to bow down before the name of the law and beg for rights, which transfers property rights from one master to a universal master and maintain the social positioning of blacks. So even if there is a change, this change does not actually create material progress. This rules of freedom is what leads to the economic of social death and my medical simulation for white slavery TV that reconstructs power related violent humanistic orientation in the world and forces forces the black outside of time itself, marking the black with a relationality with the past and future that is simultaneously continuation of slavery via the interpolation and overcoding of meaning from without on our bodies, worlds, and future. Now, 4 rules of analogy. They don't have a fucking argument on this. Contingency versus antagonism, lesson, cross-applied piece of will and evidence here. The 1AC description of non-citizens alienated from their target and temporal capacity and experience of alienation or exploitation follows the humanistic grammar of repression, basic contingent understanding of A, violence that is imposed because of transgressions or actions against the American grammar, i.e. trying to get into American and breed, progressive notion of the state of the attempt to grasp toward reclamation extensions of civil society that first assume that all energy is recognizable. This analysis focuses upon the black non-citizen or the black immigrant, specifically the social position that's transmogrified to accumulated fungible vessel or property which is positioned by civil society antagonistically to it and has no cartographic and temporal capacities to lose due to the stripping of historical, familial, and cultural kinship ties to non-being. In other words, blackness is an antagonistic relationship not because of an action it has committed against civil society, but because being black itself is dialectically situated in opposition to humanity. Furthermore, cross-life piece of Brady evidence here. Their evidence assumes a humanistic grammar of recognition that always forecloses upon the irreparable and irrecognizable injury of blackness, i.e. the Anna Brown and proves our argument about how it must be necessarily be placed outside of the grammar of the human to create non-black vitality and justify civil society structural adjustment of civil position, i.e. by constantly structuring blackness as a position of the unthought and always tagged into civil society's function as available equipment to create a coherent identity and grammar of oppression. Now, 5, all of these link arguments function to just as to any of their permutation, cross-apply our piece of warrant evidence here. Any combination of the free black and humanity, even if it is the distinct time, provokes ontological anxiety in civil society that manifests itself in gratuitous violence, i.e. the way in which black men were constantly lynched in the 60s and Jim Crow. Yes, it changes to modern day time, but it changes to modern lynching through the numerous amounts of black people, particularly black men, murdered by the police. Now, the alternative debate, they say we don't have no all, but you literally did not listen or rejected the affirmative offer and orientation or political apostrophe of the one you see that attempts to divest the rhetorical effect of hope in the anti-black temporality as a spiritual practice of denouncing metaphysical violent black suffering. Cross-apply piece of warrant evidence here as our alternative is not one of utopia or restitution or the act of renouncing what that will not change political structure or offer political program, and instead of the act of retrieving the spiritual concept of hope from the captivity of political, which doesn't begin with the orientation of the affirmative, with the affirmation of life as the affirmative, but straddled with blackness the being toward death that's like the capacity to have ontological and semantic integrity of the concept of life and death itself. You shouldn't breathe life back into the world. You should let it suffocate it, which means that we only have a risk of an offense that the alternative is able to solve. They read a piece of let's go to the line by line. They read this piece of Gordon evidence, but you can also group their Gordon 17 and Gordon 18 evidence as double turn Gordon's argument, and that we should be epistemic uncertain about how we come to understand the world and the conscience of black existentialism, but the one AC's creation and the future not yet to come to master the unknowability of the world, the future destroyed to replicate the forms of cruel optimism and bad faith that Gordon is literally criticizing and locks the aphorisms to a telos that totalize the revolutionary potential contingency itself. Vote negative on presumption. They must remain skeptical. We must remain skeptical and refuse epistemologic certainty of the affirmative. An independent case turn to the affirmative and a double turn to all of their contingency arguments. And 2, fetishization of black beef desire. We should be skeptical of weaponization of intercommunal conversations that they talk about before and black thought to justify the little investments in the political as y'all but you forgot that this is the same Louis R. Gordon as the Phoenician author who concludes that blackness overcomes the body due to a continued flawed pathology of anti-blacks that gets internalized over time to societal north. They make an argument about empirical reform, but empirical reform fail. 1, anti-blackness in cities. You can always find aggregates that show signs of progress, but there are always already other statistics that prove other forms of anti-blacks, i.e. while liberals were highlighting the positive of the civil rights movement as they are, many ignored the crack cocaine epidemic, which was civil society's safety net that happened in the fucking 60s, right after the 60s, or wherever it would have happened in the 70s, right after the 60s too. Anti-blacks overwhelmed reform and anxious Brian 12 evidence. The concept of legal pragmatism relies upon an injury being imposed upon someone in the first place to be able to alleviate their suffering, but our argument is that emancipation from proclamation to the civil rights movement to the recent political reforms they mentioned proves anti-blackness has seized all notion of reform. The more reform arguments they prove, the more they prove the persuasive and omnipotent nature of anti-blackness in a metaphysical sense, which is beyond any notion of legalism, as one step forward is always proven to be 2 steps back and only generates cruel optimism to project and normalize civil society in the future through futurity and state inevitability claims such as their Kirkia and Babel evidence. Now, these arguments are also defensive anyways. This proves the hyperspecificity of our criticism means that if we want to risk of link is always already try or die for the alternative. And 4, cross-apply trigger time arguments here, and I see the assumption of linear temporality state reform arguments are predicated on they read this piece of lesser evidence, but 1, irrelevant. This argument is a specific criticism of white British post-humanism, which is not our humanistic critique, where our humanistic critique stems from. And 2, the fact that humanism is written with contradictions is precisely the problem. Is it able to create contingent arbitrary conditions for reasons why the blacks are excluded from civil society? And 3, the evidence, as I say, states, quote, it would be progressive and liberatory, it could be dispossessive and cultural genocide, end quote. This is the slips we are criticizing, as these terms are neutral but rather segregated upon racial lines as progression and liberation are only limited to non-black subsidy and dispossession and cultural genocide is imposed upon the black subject. This is another independent reason to condemn humanists and remain skeptical of the rhetorical artifact of the one they see.
Okay.
We'll take prep.
Okay,
How
sounds
much?
good.
We had 701 left or something like that?
Yeah, 705.
So
We got it on the board.
705 starts now. Cool. Hey. I need you to answer these arguments. They're already typed up for you. I'll see this.
So they answered Lester.
On the line by line.
We should probably read another humanism card if you have one.
When we send it via email?
I feel like the ones I have are too total. And it's like, yeah, that one's great. Given our strategy.
Alright, you can stop, Brett.
Okay. How much do y'all have left?
I've worked
640.
640. Let me write that down before we start.
I already did all.
Okay.
You ready?
Darius, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, excellent. Could you walk me through some examples of spiritual hope?
Rejection of the one I see. I don't think that we also have to produce that labor for you, which is exactly our argument.
Well, if it's a question of scholarship, what does it look like? I don't think you have to do it.
In a negative balance.
Is there any other instance of spiritual hope besides rejection of the one AC?
Yes, particularly your piece of Wilson 16 evidence quotes the very notion that it is not in political strategies that are good, but rather it is the very notion of rejection itself. It's not a question of the sort of word political, right? It's a question of the word movement behind it, which is what Frank Wilson in particular talked about. It's that very notion of movement that is not necessarily a step forward, but always 2 steps back towards something that is unknown, to something that is always
I have a question about the sort of slew of examples in the 2NC. You isolate a lot of different examples, differing areas of racism. How do any of those examples sort of justify the psychoanalytic theory of communication presented in your Brady evidence?
Well, like all of our arguments are based in like a notion of like sociogeny, which is based in the idea that blackness functions as the lack that allows for the symbolic order to have some sort of
so lack, symbolic order. I think your last piece of evidence mentioned something about jouissance.
Yeah.
If all those things are the warrants for your arguments, then why do sort of examples or historical analysis create these very like Lacanian psychoanalytic warrants?
Because it sort of proves that there is something that exceeds the very notion of legalism and desire itself, which is i.e. the ontological foundations that create the very instinct articulation of law
you just
itself.
said it proves these things. My question is about the word proves. How do sort of examples justify a psychoanalytic theory?
Right.
Like, where is
And
the
I think
defense
I just
of this
answered
psychoanalysis?
that, right? But I will repeat myself again, right? That these examples prove that there is something about anti-black violence that exceeds the very notion of rationality and reason, right? Our argument is that cultural studies and historical studies begins to assume a sort of temporal understanding of flight.
All right,
freedom,
I understand.
Right?
I have
of
another question.
Emancipation, right?
I have another
Our argument
question.
is that like freedom is something that is ontological and beyond the very notions of like.
I have another question.
Yeah, answer it.
The ruse of well, I didn't want to cut you off. The ruse of analogy link argument. Would progress for other racial minorities in the world be good or bad?
I don't think the one NC has like a stance on that, because our argument is that non-black subjectivity also sort of creates forms of anti-black.
Oh well, that
violence
seems like your
and
stance. Well, if non-black forms of subjectivity creates the stuff you're talking about, it seems like your stance on progress for other non-black people is bad.
I'm kind of confused by the notion of progress, which is what I'm kind of like.
Right. Okay. No, I totally understand that, but your claims are made in the context of blackness within America. I'm just asking what stance your theory would take.
All right. So then, if our argument here is that yes, if other forms, our argument is not just a question of progress. Our argument is a notion of like recognition within.
Would progress for other racial minorities being good? Would progress for other racial minorities be good?
Yes, but the
yes. Okay, wonderful.
But the app doesn't do anything. I don't know what that moment of like yes does for you. That doesn't mean anything.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything.
The order is the essentialism debate on the case.
Where is that?
Like the arguments about intercommunal.
Oh.
The idea that we essentialize flesh upon all
Oh,
bodies.
gotcha. That like the Klein, the Gordon stuff.
No, that was just like an independent argument that you made.
Oh yeah, it was right underneath the humanism thing. Okay, yeah. Excellent.
After that, the social construction debate. I switched that.
Hey, you what? Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for doing the card thing. It really helps with my flows.
Then the case offense. / framework arguments.
Okay.
And then the 1 and C top down.
The case. So on the case offense, that's the pedagogy stuff as well, Comins, etc. Or just like the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds wonderful.
Is there a dot?
Yeah, I'm sending it right now.
Do I need to fill this? I might go run and get some water. Can y'all wait till I go and back with some water?
Yeah.
Can I have the key to your room?
Yeah.
Which number is this?
334. My name's also on the board.
Did you understand those? Why, was you fast or quick?
You're not good.
Was it too much fast or was it?
I mean, you're
Okay. I think it's just the cards are like super long. So it's like
Yeah, that's just how
I
they
had a lot of cards.
Oh, what's good, my guy? What's good?
Making my
I just finished helping our mentees. Oh, is this going online?
You're. What's the problem?
No. This going online?
Sekou don't want it to be
I
recorded.
didn't finish. So I
But it's being recorded right now.
It's just like for
I didn't get to it, okay. I don't deserve
Oh,
this
okay.
kind of stuff. Like stuff.
High educational purposes.
What's poppin'? EDU.
Hi, Larry.
Oh shit, Lawrence is right there.
Oh, sorry.
I ain't see you, bro.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone not ready?
I'm good.
I'm not sorry. I have to download the doc. My bad. I was not here just now. Excellent.
Cool. The socialism debate cross our social despotism here as a justification for our universality that are based on singularity socialized with our all measured by and based upon a universal dialectical understanding of one's proximity to social. That's basically our arguments that anti-black is not functioning universally but operates statistically across Africa. That is for the argument just negate that there is a common anti-black prejudice that is supposed antagonistically upon black questions. This argument is not hyper-specific to Afro-pessimist understanding the word. Now the psychoanalysis debate they say drive is false, but 3 arguments. 1 point relevant. This is a criticism of economy of psychoanalysis in the context of psychological drives such as hunger and thirst, which is why the evidence concludes that we should be animalistic if we just act on instinct, but there evidence doesn't show that white folks basically act on anti-black instinct in the sex go in the scene with examples of the Starsville to mirror Russian standard blank. 2 point. This card concludes negative. It's about driving states that people act against their own best interests, i.e. hunger, but that doesn't disprove the argument, but because if they're unconscious drives such as hunger and anti-black must be on utility rational explanation. 3 point. Start this argument as this is a shallow attempt by liberals to ratchet down and disavow the spirit of symbolic nature of anti-blackness and an independent reason as to why you should be skeptical to all of the one of your arguments. Now the social construction debate, the Who Does 15 evidence cross-bar sites and evidence growth there. Who does decline evidence? Our argument doesn't disagree with the idea that anti-black is social construction, but this does negate a point that this has material effects to the point that there can be no ontological resistance in terms of resistance and recognition within a white society, which is the distinction between ontology and political ontology. And see, point that anti-blackness also operates on a symbolic level that necessitates black being defined in opposition to humanity for civil society's coherency. And none of their arguments apply on the social death floor as they misunderstand our argument. Calls for hybridity evidence as even though the black is socially dead, this does not signify that black life is non-existent, which is our necessary argument. Now, do you want to see offense? And now do you want to see offense? And now do you want to see the investment in immigration rights fucks over black folk that are structurally positioned to be terrorized by the prison industrial complex? That's Osman. In 17, the Trump administration decision to rescind DACA. The immigrants' rights movement came out of the full defense of the Jews. This flurry of protests about black action is in stark contrast to the response to lack thereof to the Trump administration decision to permit the temporary protected status. The nature for Haiti. This would put 60,000 Haitis living in the U.S. at the worst of deportation. The immigrant rights movement has never fully addressed the need of black migrants in its advocacy work. Black migrants are struck in an ironic position simultaneous hyper-visibility and invisibility. Black migrants are more likely to have criminal records than any other immigration group. More than 1 in every 5 people facing deportation from criminal grounds is black migrants are being assimilated into the chair of the prison industrial complex at an alarming rate. In the era with the word intersectionality has entered the public lexicon. The immigration rights movement has filled the deeply pervasive nature of anti-black racism, the existence of black migrants. And next is a negative.
Let me say something real quick.
Sure.
Hey, They make an argument on Bacon's Rebellion. This doesn't assume the Arab slave trade that happens in 1492, which postdates any offense to reasons why racial codes or indigenous racial codes existed before black racial codes, but also even furthermore, it doesn't take into account that the people a part of Bacon's Rebellion were also slaves and forced by white settlers to actually take a part of this skirmish in the first place. This is our argument that is written by a master's, like a person in there like trying to get their master's program, has already been criticized for this very notion and has actually repelled their own argument. Go ahead.
This evidence is the 1/15 evidence that said the CJS has instructional logic is anti-black and hearing violence against black folk. Even black people are charging those dishes friend the way you evaluate progress when they want to see something this specific. Anti-black citizens are produced as black. If 15 African American citizens are failed by the U.S. CJS because of it, in great racial biases, the ways that subjects are treated to 1 in 16 African Americans are subject to the criminal justice system compared to 1 in 106 of white people. This is implicit right. 95% of all prosecutors are white. System prosecutors have so much control in our there are so many subconscious messages that are given to us that say that why did black people at 53% of African American youth who are arrested under the age of 18 are charged out there. They go to a completely different court as opposed to being in a juvenile court. Now they're framing the debate. They say determine whether the act is good, but no. This is all of our link arguments prove why the 1AC is bad in the first place, which means that we already made this argument. The point is that framework is a link charge structure analysis. This proves that civil society constantly attempts to establish rules in response to refusal politics. Now the Brady 12 evidence you have conceded all of the questions that we asked you at the top of the 1AC. We say 1, can you hear a black shadow? 2 point, how can the shadow speak back? And 3, how can the shadow know about itself? These questions were not answered and prove a diss out to the 1AC. Our argument is that inner sort of subjectivity is always demolished by the ideology of subjectivity, not necessarily white supremacy within the word itself. And the B point is that state reform is bad historical analysis proves this kind of swami so legal public structures have failed to deliver substantial social justice from inequalities. There's also legal forms to reiterate rather than just for unequal distribution of power pending political possibilities to the law, circumstances, the boundaries, the change, legal recognition, works to constrain and control, responsibilities for black people for black people into and they give defined by obligations and response to the citizenship rights and the process of possession of black as subject and black race fundamentally shape recognition as liberal subject black subject right to the full citizenship, but as a subject always in either form of the punishment inclusion into citizenship rights can operate as a technique of domination. Martha Cardin domination. Now the Afro-Pets Index debate first. Genetic is constitutive of anti-blacks having during the middle fashion. Just want to see cannot comprehend and plan of freedom for slave access reform to two responses. Which then it's in the notion that city society are never conflict in the national part for the black integrates the national city society period on the middle class. Put another way, no slave nor what the slave is not a liberty anti-human is the slave is which is responsible anyone of case within our non-six approach to the rubric or danger reversal. And we're also winning the root cause because we're just in a town without response to so-called great Martians feminists and political discourse might not have developed how slavery did not simply re-characterize the ontology of the African, also created the human in the late ages and the late middle ages came right to an ontological category. Humans cannot produce itself without the simultaneous destruction which became known as black shadow slavery gave birth to the human, but not before it was rendered as black for the political ontology of humanity social death of the blacks. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, read this. Remember this Sarcer card. This answer to Whitney. Here.
Oh, cool.
You said we're not.
Right there.
You said we're
The
not.
Saucer 15 evidence. The Saucer 15 evidence is the answer to when out race. It is a set of social political processes underwritten by the materiality of the body racial assumptions which goes beyond ethic and culture differences. The fact of practice they array and coded on the skin of the market now refers to intellectual materializing the black objects by seeing the body developing for affectivity. But to assume that resistance possible that the body is never totally so to it cannot be trusted, but it can only be formally re-engaged in racial studies. They fail to take a factor to what it consisted of all anti-black all black identity. Black identity must always be free by black disease which are too interested in the ancient expensive ontology of the opposite steadfast global for system anti-black structurally, but just people coming outside of a human relation, it is rigid to define racial identity as fluid, and doing so racial identity policies rest on the mistaken view of the subject.
Right. Can I have a timer?
Mark that card as subject.
Yeah.
Is that a card that was already sent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. We'll start now.
Who's the one now?
I am.
Jacob.
Oh, where's that last one?
What was the last card that was just read?
The saucier.
It is marked as rest on a mistaken view of the subject. Marked as subject.
Oh, okay. No, we were just looking for it. Thank you, though.
Yay, debate. All right, peace.
Was there anything?
So for any of you who have questions about the block or the last two speeches that happened, now would be a good time to ask them because otherwise they'll be prepping for the 2 hour and they won't be able to answer your questions. Sure.
Can you explain the black shadow?
Our argument is that blackness is like a metaphor, or you could think about the shadow as an allegory to blackness, right? The shadow is something that is not able to speak, but is something that is constantly following you, and also creates the sort of shape of what a particular person is, right? Our argument is that one, this shadow exists as the sort of like residue of the human that exists not only inside or sort of the thing that is necessary to create the very concept of the human, but also exists outside of it as well. But also even even furthermore that the shadow has no voice and that you cannot hear it. You cannot talk to a shadow. So our argument is that blackness also exists as a shadow, that it's whose voice is never able to be heard, not only by the political sphere but by civil society, as it is not recognizable, and its injury is not recognizable due to the numerous amounts of attempts to sort of incorporate the free black into the political. It has always been expelled by gratuitous violence.
Can you explain the trick of time argument and their response?
I really don't understand their response.
It's a Beveridge card.
Oh, I know. I still don't understand.
Okay.
Like, I don't think
feelings mutual.
Like, you should probably ask them because I'm just biased. But our argument is that they attempt to separate themselves from the particular space that they are in through the rhetorical projection of the 1AC, i.e., they ignore the status quo and the way in which immigrants are still, immigrants / non-citizens are still being detained right now. So the 1AC does not do anything, but rather creates a political fantasy that allows for them to move towards some form of ethical posturing to make themselves feel better about things that they haven't done, which then actually distances themselves from actual forms of activism and leads to cyber activism through a moral ballot, i.e. the 1AC, or the passing of the ballot, the passing of the plan via the ballot, right? It just creates an ethical position in which everybody feels comfortable to act and exist in the world, but also justifies and creates forms of cognitive dissonance as we see people on the street daily being harassed. But it's this moment in which, oh, I voted for a particular affirmative, this made me feel better. Oh, I am more woke, this made me feel better, without understanding that that wokeness itself doesn't translate into political praxis.
And the response is...
I don't.
Can I take that? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't think they have one.
No, he's prepping. He's
I agree.
Okay. So the response was twofold. The first one was that this argument about spaces not doing anything, spaces being a side of like sort of liberal enjoyment, applies 100% to the 1NC as well. They've sort of presented why the affirmative is anti-black, why these structures are anti-black, and they're like, you should vote negative to problematize those things. If they win their theory of communication, it would disprove that. The second sort of argument is the entirety of the 1AC scholarship page. It says that iterative debating over solutions does two things. A, it gets students to sort of care about these issues because currently in sort of their distance from this issue / never have to experience them. But in debate, they sort of bring them closer. So it's an impact turn to their like sort of like distancing arguments. And the second argument is that even if their arguments are correct about having to only always have this like sort of negative attitude towards these things, it is better to know the very specifics of the thing that you were talking about. So only debate's iterative process sort of accesses that. For example, through cutting cards, through doing research, I would know like in which states these plea waivers exist, what sort of lawyers offer them, in which courts that they're offered, the distinction between the federal courts in which they're done and the immigration courts in which they're applied, etc. All of that know-how is necessary to actualize any form of resistance against civil society. So it seems like sole problematization is not the most effective strategy, even if their structural arguments are correct.
Okay.
Alrighty. Looks like 511 left. You have that other card, right? You'll also send that one out separately.
I will email it out, but I
I don't have any cards. Actually, 2 more seconds, I do have a card. You had one of those.
Okay.
So y'all still taking prep?
Yeah.
We'll restart it. Can you restart yours so you have the correct time?
I have it running.
Oh, you have it running? Okay, excellent. I will. I can send this card out during their speech or during your speech.
Okay, cool.
Or like right after.
Okay, 448.
I don't feel like right now.
I got you.
Does anyone have an iPhone charger?
No, it's in my room. Sorry.
I would think flowing the speech is a good idea.
Okay, I will do that.
I mean, it's not going to be straight down, so flowing the blocks will not be essentially relevant to this. Nope.
I'm just trying to email this out, y'all.
Mine is sent out.
Alright, cool. Take your time.
The one will be at the bottom. So that's a 1 hour thing. Just bring it up towards the end of the speech.
You think some more?
I also send this card out.
Who is it? Oh no, bro. I can't drink from nobody else.
At whatever point you want to do Williams, here's the overview. This is all you need to say. I'll blow it up into it. And at whatever point you want to do rules of analogy, these are the cards and arguments.
I'm fucking weak.
Yep, I'll just have this here. So look at it whenever you feel like it.
Alright, you ready?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna try to group stuff thematically. So sorry about the line by line, y'all.
What's the order?
He's gonna just group each
everything.
debate, like the rules of
We're just gonna
analogy
flow
debate.
straight down.
Yeah.
Alright.
Or bottom up, or side to side. You do you.
I feel the same way. I'm like, what is this nonsense? What did I do all this for?
I follow every speech on a different sheet of paper anyway.
Yeah.
I always like try to anticipate after pivot.
Yeah.
Cause y'all love that.
One of y'all.
Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Alright, come on. Let's make that move.
All right, is everybody good? 1 hour's about to start.
Wait, let me time it.
I got it on the timer right now, bro.
I got it.
Alright, come on, go.
All right, I'm gonna begin.
The case outweighs it in Impact's acting. You should act to solve process violence when you can because root cause will never be fully settled. Bryant, Impact says families are being torn apart right now. People are torn from their homes and losing their livelihoods. You can solve that even if you cannot change the entire structure of anti-blackness, which means you should not run completely just because we don't solve 100%. Even if we only solve 50%, that's a damn large number of people not being deported in the world. This also answers all the band-aid stuff. It's not an endpoint, but a first aid is a necessary first step before we can even get to the hospital because that will never happen if you die in the short term. Forestalling direct action on structure violence is unethical in the name of broader revolution. That is the Delgado. But you should make sure you can keep the heat on before the revolution can possibly start. Now the framing debate proper. The debate has to focus over the planet. It is valuable. It is the only point of states for actually having a discussion with the impact of our common sense. Says that discussion is prerequisite to actually effectuate any material change, either ours or theirs. The only thing for otherwise you prevent the infinite with this point on one bad assumption, they automatically win. Also, if you refuse to fight the one I say, then you cannot win any of their offense either because they have to have a burden of rejoinder to disprove the one I say. Cross-examination proves that all this presumption stuff is bullshit because it's a red herring. All of their offense relies on us spilling over to do something bad. If we don't do anything, you don't do either. Because all you do is negate us, which means you can vote for all presumption. Also, presumption full stab because they ripped alternative as of the truancy. Also, you should presume against the status quo because they all agree that it's racist and fucked up. So you should vote for any risk of change. That's the Delgado. And also, you should send the comments that no good answer to this problem solving is the best solution in a hypothetical sentence like the pen necessary to develop critical thinking skills and engage in depth information. Otherwise, you get overly sweeping generalization that cannot do anything to change the world. Also, answer the late because even if the state is bad or policy about this activity, just a way of learning about that so that we can challenge it. The Williams evidence is dropping says that it's impossible to get navigate civil society without some form of education about these subjects. It provides us the information about stuff we haven't. Also, it says that we're not stated we are revolutionary, which means that we have no link to the broader impact, which also bolsters the permutation, which we incorporate from the interdisciplinary of education, the ethics to their framework. All this also enters the voyeurs and stuff and proves we are a step towards action, not away from the communication stuff. Is also silly and labeling too because they're trying to communicate a ballot towards you. It's also unfalsifiable because he doesn't realize put in one ballot one example of communication failing. Obviously, if you understand the one I see, then you should not vote for this. Then the alternative debate, even if they win that we do nothing, you should still vote affirmative because they have proactive reasons why voting negative is unethical. Decline impact towards the notion of fatalism, flattening black experience, predicting across the nation, but all the interracial content stuff you cannot and should not adopt a pessimism so something that would deny the value of brown versus board. This is also the thesis of the Brian. They vote negative as a gift to the alt-right because they are not the only ones who love to say that every progressive law is bad. The right wing loves that too. The Tea Party also does the exact same thing as the one and and you cannot tell me what the material difference is between that. If you lift off the mask, you'll learn that Darius is actually Ted Cruz in disguise. This spiritual hope is a double turn with all the communication stuff because they are trying to hope for something and use communication to justify this. Also, just the consequence that doesn't solve their firm. They also if they've got all that we get to permute it, you can put after and review and refuse to fight some other shit. They have no reason why this is the one law that you need to negate in order to actualize black apathetic utopia. The Puritans and stuff answered by Delgado default to the team that has the real evidence of the question. Kagan and Elmsworth with the immigration law and say that actually there are empirical examples of change happening. For example, the plenary power in other contexts should be extended to immigration because it has worked in the past. That because there's a literal court case that happened and protecting immigrants from indefinite detention. This is also the reason why sweeping claims are bad because there's generic evidence. Like for empirical specificity of immigration law, there's no causal link to surveillance, and you can't win a DA without you needing serious surveillance. Already status quo. We have never said that fiat is perfectly durable. Fiat is not durable, but it's not perfectly reversible either. These are the Gordon Evans most real non-ontology debate that sometimes there are changes and then sometimes they can roll back, but it's a part of a broader process that even if every solution does not succeed or stay in place that contributes to a broader success on the road, the moral arc might be long, but it still does something. The ontology debate problem is also into all the overuse of winning ontology does not mean they win because it's just a non-unique FOI impact that we do not need to win order to win around. Even if you can't change all of the anti-blackness, you can still keep families together with an impact to those families. Many evidence is completely dropped and says they're a big FOI that can do anything about it, which means it's not often for them, even if they are correct. The negative offers a false trust between optimism and pessimism. The affirmative is neither of those, and neither is the world. According Gordon Evans answers and said reality is too complicated to be sweepingly generalized by totalizing theories. She recognizes a series of historically continued processes that are sometimes dominant and sometimes passive. This is also why you cannot cherry-pick examples no matter how persuasive they are. There will always be some examples for both forward and backward steps because neither theory is 100% true every single time. That's not also why the slew of two examples does not matter because none can ever scale up to a 100% totalizing theory about how all society is overcorrelated by libidinal or whatever the hell. The rules of analysis on centralism data, these waivers are just used to deport these Somalis and decipher their explanations is a reduction of understanding of that impact, the negative notes of black immigrants exist, the refusal of tactical knowledge, political possibility, malleable humans, and churches, the impact that prevents genuine improvements, homicide, teen-related glaring. After the black radical intellectual history should be respected for the afterbirth of the existence of anti-black racism, not by people that it's neither new nor shocking for many a black revolution movement. This is not included in the there or get gender to be mobilized with the political accomplishments that could have not or for the Indian solid could have worked for a strategical tactical mode. That's the end of the card.
That's it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. The Dylan Evans answer by Robert is all overly dual. This is the notion of choices is all nothing. This is completely dropped. And also impacted by the one he devoted to God and today. With the radio factual survival because internal blind attitude also cross nation proves that this does not link to us. The cruel optimism of the answer by Gordon is not cruel optimism because not even if everything is role like sometimes it's still continues to a broader iterative change. The black beef the Jones and answers to the federalism of identity over actual analysis. Obviously, it's not better for you to read all white scholars, which would not be more productive or possible if they are going to do the labor for example. You vote affirmative exam in argument. They less different to answer the humanism critique, even if humanism is not perfect. Either the alternative even works because they negate the possibility of ever saying things like racism are categorically wrong. The one art stuff. They have no answer to the car and Van Balen, which is more specific and better. Anything that we have statistics to show that coalitions are possible and sometimes politics can overcode racial and inevitability. The co-and now evidence is not a student to professor citing an empirical example. The is an after example because it proves that it's not fundamentally anti-black. This also proves that Will Smith wrong because he defaults to things like saying, oh, even if black people did it was because white people gave them horses, which proves that the theory is utterly unfalsifiable. It's not a critique of Lacan. Sorry, Sekou, you just missed out the card. It's a little about the liberal economy. They're ratcheting down stuff to prove how unfalsifiable that it is because it means if we ever say that you are wrong, you say, oh, you're coming from a point about the Brady Evans answered by the analysts they conceded that blackness is flattened in this world because it fails to acknowledge the differences between different populations. Even their Osborne Evans, I'll just literally read a quote to this, complete the 1AR. It says, as a young African organizer, my first activism was within the immigrant rights movement. I did not want to change the conversation, I wanted it to become more expansive. Even their authors acknowledge that even if the world is structurally, ontologically antagonistic, there can still be productive moments of reform. The after is that. It's not a denial of the overall ontology. It is a tactical move within that to protect families.
Their card has a line about
their author agrees with this.
Has a line about immigrant activism being good.
Oh my God, man.
I highlighted it and put it in the document.
False.
We highlighted and put it in the document.
I know that our argument is not that. Our argument is that immigration
we're starting the 2 hour?
should be more responsible. No, this is like crap.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. If you want to talk, that's cool. I'd love to talk.
That's what I'm saying. Y'all were talking after your speech time.
It's been too long.
No. I would love to. I'm just gonna flip this from there and hopefully answer it. Yeah. I'm just gonna get new sheets and float it straight down. This is an utterly ridiculous waste of paper.
I know.
Shit, I'm done. Living the one in our life.
the one in C job. 2048. Classic. What's your favorite in-round I'm done with like my work game?
Oh, like you're like once you're finished.
Yeah, he's playing 2048. What would you do?
When I was the one, I usually type up like a portion of what the 2 I was going to say, like in some politics. So when they get to politics, they can just read whatever wrote for uniqueness.
Oh, I see. Do you have any favorite games, Lawrence?
I just stare at Darius.
You what?
I just stare at Darius.
Do you feel special about that?
Occasionally I type up something that we can do. And then Darius chooses whether or not to read it in the middle of the speech. He gave up
Yes, fluing this around is very difficult. Like,
I have time. Damn, I got a lot of time.
You good, bro. Take your time.
Oh no, my speech already kind of ready though. I'm just getting myself mostly prepared.
Emotionally prepared.
Yeah.
I'm a little scared.
Oh no, for you, yeah, you can.
That one in our season, bro. You have so much prep time for this.
You know, the one in R is just like, if it's blazing fast, it's just like so fucking devastating.
I know.
Like, especially in K debates, if the 1R is like 6 minutes blazing fast on like a T argument, the 1R is just like, what does the 1R do? It can't unpack any of the K stuff.
I won't be giving 1R though in college.
You won't, or you will be?
Nah, I won't.
Oh, you 1A, 2N?
Yeah.
You know who your partner is?
Find out August 18th.
Good stuff. Do you know the potential ones?
All the freshmen.
Okay.
It's like Brianna, Aida, Krishna. Yeah.
Are those the freshmen?
Nah, we have some more. Charles Horn, who debated for Polytechnic. Madison Eggers, who debated for some school in Wisconsin. And then Sean Moon.
Okay. I think I've heard some of those names.
Yeah.
You giving it to an hour, right? Yeah. You got like 4 minutes left? Yeah.
Y'all ordering pizza?
I'm gonna go use the restroom.
You need me, holla at me.
The RAs were just like standing on the left. Because every time somebody's like brings up an update, they're like, "Oh, we're winning the revolution" or whatever. It's like, good job, it's like so many different those.
Like add like cat stuff. Like the government's.
Damn.
No.
Yeah.
I was like, looking at how do you do that?
We put a ladder.
Okay, so now how can I check?
Good job, comrade. See,
No, that's in this my numbers.
I'm trying to figure out, do I want to turn your whole argument going about falsifiability bad and the 1AC isn't falsifiable? Or, yeah, that's just some Brad Bowman, cause they just failed into it. They don't have warrants to reason why falsifiability is one good, or two, why an argument isn't falsifiable. I don't know if I want to do that. Should I do it, Larry?
Listen to your heart.
Nah, I don't want to do it, man. That's too easy. I just put defense on it. No, matter of fact, yes, I will do that.
Don't freak out, man. That's like nightmare.
I know.
Well, yeah, that's we just get real. We just don't. It's like first get tired, but we wouldn't get tired. You just drop in.
Yeah, like it gives like
I would double check. I'm pretty sure the multi communication system set place. I gotta read even between like wait, do that left philosopher you recommend the VBI18. That's what
Don't let that laptop fall, it's kind of leaning. I don't know who this is Sekou Cisse?
Trying to see some of the 18.
I agree with
I have no idea. Excuse me. Whose computer is this?
Oh, that's mine.
Oh, okay.
I was like, what is this extra computer?
I was like, all right, damn, Sekou, you're really going hard at this debate thing.
No,
Got two?
No. Trust me, no. I'm sorry.
I'm really deceased at this whole like Tennessee's in disguise shit.
Okay, I would like to say that I advise Jacob not to say it.
Because you're just Rand Paul in disguise.
Oh, me?
Complicity.
Rand or
Go,
Ron?
like,
Rand.
down the flow,
Okay,
really,
I can take
honestly
Rand.
and truly, like if it really like comes from like if it really starts somewhere, I'll start on the voyeurism dissent, which will answer all their case outweighs arguments, and then where a lot of this arguments from like framework v framework kind of goes down, right?
I'm just
And
gonna
then
flow
from
top down.
All right, then
Yeah, we're good.
Flow straight down then.
Yeah.
I was gonna go line by line, but fair enough. All right. Is almost everybody ready? One voyeurism dissents. Woof, they have not answered the question of how their orientation is actually past the result of material condition, but rather made it a question of method and pedagogy they produce. Now, remember, this isn't a plan versus counterplan debate, but a framework versus framework debate. They still need to prove that their education and orientation they produce in round, not the model they provide, result their impacts, and they have to win their justification for their framework to accept the impacts of the AC, which is the independent reason to vote negative on presumption and solvency. Definitely the only argument they have is just that, yes, because we just don't do anything, just proves that you don't do anything as well. But that's a reason that you vote negative on presumption. That is also a burden of majority, but also too, and reasons why that your app is not certificate, but also even B, fungible commodification. They really haven't. I really want to reinvent the wheel here as their ethics and scholarship replicate anti-black sentiment, which is a literal impact turn to all of the arguments in this debate around operates within the zone of sacrifice. Impact calculus functions as the parasitic relationship internally to how debate exists as a space parasitic upon encapsulating, commodifying, dangling black flesh as a social currency to purchase non-black ethicality and moves toward an innocent view and affirmative ballot because of black piece of Wilson evidence here. And this is what creates non-black cognitive dissonance between one political orientation and their material practice as a result of one's default to the social norm and anti-blacks. And now all of our arguments and historicals have proved as reason why that we are falsifiable, but they have not made an argument which is why the affirmative is falsifiable, as none of their arguments are actually won, none of their solvency mechanism actually happened in this material practice, which is the impact turn to reason why that they are not falsifiable. But even furthermore, the impact of causing a distance is hypercharged by libidinal economy arguments, and as an affirmative balance what unconsciously justifies them to censor themselves by saying that I am ethical enough, that I have done enough, the least of the disavow the structure anti-blacks and justify them to become bystanders and anti-blacks, which is what I was explaining to you during the time when you asked me this question. Now see, this outweigh their civic education functions of dissent to all of their interpretation and scholarship, what they really do not have an answer on, which is reason why all the arguments about civic education we can either get A in high school or B we take in a gen ed class in college, and also too they make an argument about trigger time across the black piece of Dylan evidence here, as black time doesn't move literally but rather accumulates gratuitously. They misunderstand that anti-blackness violence doesn't go away through time but repetitively haunts society with the lack of movement from slavery to the convict legal system to Jim Crow to the prison industrial complex, which answered all of their arguments to reasons why Brown versus Board of Education is something that is constantly removed back via the prison industrial complex. This belief in biopolitical futurity defers the confrontation with social positioning of black not being creates a perverse form of pseudo-masochism, which they have conceded, wherein black folks invest in a form of cruel optimism, finding joy in the death that we find as we win victories, quote-unquote victories in the political spirit that require the slave to bow down before the master and before the name of law and beg for rights, which transfers the notion of a conceded argument that transfers the notion of property rights from one master to a universal master and maintains the social positioning of the black, i.e. the state, and they also conceded a rule of analogy argument across black piece of Wilson evidence here as the description of the non-citizens alienated from category and temporal capacity and experience exploitation, false, like humanistic grammar oppression, basically continued understanding of A, violence that is imposed because of transgression against or an action against American grammar, and B, progressive notion of the state that attempted grasp to a reclamation and extension of civil society in the first place. But this assumes that their injury must be recognizable by the court in the first place, which means that the 50% of the immigrants that will be released are non-black citizens, are non-black immigrants, but the 50% are arguments that the 50% of folks that will be staying in the prison industrial complex, which is hypercharged by the argument of the one in R, are black immigrants themselves, which means that you don't solve for black people, you only solve for non-black people, and this is a conceded argument as well, which then hypercharges all of our arguments. The reason why your Delgado evidence does not create a sort of ethical positioning in the world, but rather that this 50% is necessary to justify civil society coherence itself, which is the argument that you have conceded. But also even further, where you can go to the 2NR social argument, that doesn't mean you answer the argument. You can come from our piece of sex and evidence. The superficial totalization of black life and social life ignores our entire theorization of social death. We'll group all the social death arguments, group their Gordon evidence then one of our claims our critique of agency capacity must not be read as a denunciation of black agency, but as an index of specific relations of violence focused on the political condition of a particular form of anti-black violence which structurally prohibits the equivalence of black relations to those primary tropes of the non-citizenship which encode and represent the limits of what classifies a human subject. These structural prohibitions are not contingent on black agency, which is a necessary argument they need to win for any of their claims to be true, and we are more hyper-specific on the claim that we are gratuitously predetermined by the existence, or by the we are gratuitously predetermined by the existence of a repressive political formation. We categorize as anti-black that situates black agency antagonistic to the social relation which they are conceded, but not because blacks lack the capacity of sentient being, because this capacity is undermined by political relations, which means that we access all of their arguments about social construction and assume this claim in the first place, which means that all of their arguments only extend and fortify the structured anti-black relations of power relations. They don't destroy the way in which power relations functions, they just redistribute power relations in the first place. Now, Gordon proper whoops. You can see the independent double term argument that when he sees creation of a future not yet to come, attempt to master the unknowability of the future, replicate the forms of bad faith Gordon criticizes in your literal piece of evidence by using hindsight bias through scenario planning and locks the affirmatives into resistance to a telos that totalize the revolutionary potential of contingency, vote negative on presumption. Again, as we should remain skeptical that when he sees epistemological assumption and refuse the epistemic certainty of the 1AC, there are no new 2AR arguments to protect my 2 and R. And I respond that I do not have a 3 and R argument. Now the ultimate, they make all the link arguments function as one disattentical permutation, but they're really not going for one. But also they have conceded that a rejection of the act is material practice, so we are the only one that are providing actual material solution to it. Space and the orientation to a political policy, the one they see that attempts to bypass the rhetorical and effective hope and anti-black temporality as the spiritual practice of denouncing metaphysical violence and black suffering across the police of war and evidence here as our alternative, not one of utopia or restitution. Of the act denouncing will not change the political structure or offer a political program, instead the act of retrieving the spiritual concept of hope from the captivity of the political. They originally see the lesser 30 to 12 evidence, but they have made it. They conceded a turn which is offensive for us. The fact of humanism riddled with contradictions, precisely the problem is able to create continued arbitrary conditions for the reasons for why the blacks are excluded from civil society and how the notions of progression and liberation become racialized upon upon white bodies, and how dispossession and cultural genocide become racialized upon the black. They have also, honestly and truly, I think that's pretty much it. Okay. They make an argument how blackness is like flat, and that's answered above about the social claims. They make an argument about authors say we want to be expensive. I want to explain this. The argument here is not that this author wants to actually work in immigration policy, but criticizes the very notion that immigration policy leaves out the notions of anti-black violence, right? And that xenophobia cannot understand how anti-black violence functions in the world because it is antagonistic to the very space and does not attempt to ascend to humanistic grammar.
We can talk about it. Okay. Can I ask everyone for a favor while I'm prepping for the 2AR? Could you all not be extremely loud? Like it's really, really loud? Sorry, I'm very easily distracted. Hey, Lauren. Hey, what's up?
Oh yeah. Okay, so
yeah, that'll be the top. That'll be the top.
You can check the doc.
Just a second.
I think it's a good framing. I think we dropped it. That'd be the very top?
That'll be the very top. Debate is an iterative process.
Okay, if you could do that
first,
or I'll just do that. Like, I'll just
falsifiability of Jones in defense of that. Objective method's better.
Okay.
That's a minor thing.
Okay.
The second, the last thing.
Wait, give me just 1 second.
Go for it.
All right, everyone. I need you all to be quiet for a little bit. We're gonna do bed check. I'm gonna point at you, and you're gonna tell me your name, and so I can check you off. So, Tiff.
Natalie.
Last name? G-A-N-G.
Ty.
You want to type up any part?
Type of Gordon.
Gordon? Sure. And this is the last thing I had to add.
What is this?
What's up, Liam?
Yeah, what's up?
Last name?
Saoji, S-A-O-J-I.
S. What?
A-O-J-I.
That feels like a really cheap way to make the 2AR, but
it was pretty long.
Okay, this is fair.
What?
Juna.
What last name?
That's just so cheese.
That's how we do.
Caroline.
Just Gordon specifically, or most ontology related stuff?
If you can do the ontology related
I'll do
stuff.
Gordon first.
Yeah. I'm gonna just think carefully about how I want to plan this speech out.
Wait.
Their responses were like, oh wait, Darius, I want you to explain an argument to me real quick. I need to explain the argument.
Last name?
Sounds like a very deep topic. Why does he just lock himself out?
Can you let him in? Thank you. Never mind. I will answer it to the best of my ability.
You open the door and put that thing in there, so... Purple sweater.
Tiffany, you have the one out.
The bad face double.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna type out the educational process stuff.
Okay, in the back, I need you now to pay attention as I point to you. PAR, PRA. Okay. Abhishek? Okay.
Matthew.
One. Surprisingly, there's only one Matthew. Yeah, that's not your name. You're absent. Good bed check. Okay, I know, it's very helpful. Juno. John, last name?
Cade. CADE.
Lee, last name?
Amrita.
How do I spell that?
AMRITA.
You were looking for me?
Oh, yeah, this argument against Gordon, the social theory of construction argument, could you explain
What's
it to
your
me?
last name?
The what?
The social theory of construction argument, where theory of social construction,
Oh, the
etc.
argument is just that Gordon says epistemic certainty is bad. The 1AC has created certainty in utilizing scenario planning, which goes against the very notion of contingency, particularly Gordon's understanding of contingency itself. You attempt to map the future.
Okay, and that is epistemically uncertain.
No, but the future itself is epistemically uncertain. Scenario planning.
Oh, I see, I see.
Then attempts to create a coherent, knowable future, right? Which is a double turn to his whole argument, until like black existentialism.
Right.
I'm bringing this up to you.
Yep.
Jennifer, you?
Lawrence can finish bed check before we start.
X, sorry, what? And then last name, Madden. Okay. Is there anyone whose name you've not told me? Yeah.
Lucia.
Oh wait, I just realized that I
How's that
sent all of
spelled?
the purpose updates we cut for next year to like the entire camp.
Super cool.
Anyone
They all
else?
read it, and now you know what the answers are going to be.
This seems counterproductive.
Anyone else whose name I've not called? No one else? Okay. Speech time.
Okay. Alright, folks. Hello.
I'd like to sleep, so...
I would like to give a speech. It'll be an overview, and then top down of the 2NR. Can you just move this over here? So
What I'm doing?
Then move the thing you wrote over
Yeah,
here. So I
sure.
can, this is it, right?
Yeah, I'm still typing it up, but it'll be finished on how you don't
Okay, excellent. All right. Our scholarship Authorship is good. Iterative debate over a plan is also good. Check the doc. They dropped this and didn't extend their theory of communication. Our Comans and Williams evidence were conceded over and over again and indicate this is the best way to gain knowledge and learn various things. There are two arguments here. First, it proves our scholarship good. Our Comans evidence explicitly says that debate over a question of immigration allows us to analyze data, think about data, learn how different disciplines. These are all quotations from the card. It is an iterative process that gives us more information. Information isn't intrinsic in and of itself. But second, it turns their offense. The Williams evidence says that we can be as pessimistic as we want about institutions, but we should have the know-how about them and if we're going to fight them in the first place. For example, if the negative choose to actualize their politics and fight the institutions, they wouldn't know where to begin because they don't know the states in which these pleas happen. But because of the iterative process of debate, I know that Utah, Tennessee, Oregon, Ohio, Nebraska, New Mexico, Mississippi, Massachusetts, Louisiana, Illinois, Florida, Arizona, and Alabama are the states in which these plea waivers occur. It is a question of knowledge production, which turns all of their arguments. Now, there's a third sort of cheesy argument that they conceded, and I feel kind of guilty about them losing on that, but they conceded that presumption goes affirmative. There was an alternative in the 2NR, which means all of their presumption claims means you vote affirmative for a risk of solvency. I know, it's so cheap, but they should not be dropping this sort of argument. The line by line, the voyeurism DA, the affirmative doesn't happen. We know this. We said it from the beginning. No shit. Y'all thinking that we crushed them in this demo debate won't have the Supreme Court rule about plea waivers, but the iterative process debate is a process of education. Why do we spend thousands of dollars coming to camps if we don't think it's valuable? Why do people engage in debate if they don't think it's valuable? Can you point to your school system and say you've learned nearly as much as you have learned in the process of debate? Their argument at the NAR was you should just take a civics class in high school. It's nowhere near as radical and incredible as debate is at teaching us the various institutions' political theories that all of their evidence relies on. They say commodification. That's obviously not the case because we've proven in sort of ethics of care argument about how the affirmative operates. They say your examples prove falsifiability. This has been the argument from the beginning. A psychoanalytic theory cannot be justified by random examples. That's not how psychoanalysis works. They are persuasive on the question of what will happen to certain people, persuasive about sort of roasting us about various examples, but that is not the question. There should be an overarching question you should ask yourself, which is what do we do once we leave? Is it okay to enter into the real world, go to college, which everybody in this room will do, and just say fuck it all? That is not a productive orientation. Negation in this debate round may seem affectively appealing, but if you think you should carry yourself like that in the real world, then I do not want you to think that I won this debate in the first place. The Gordon answers most of their ontology claims. I have no answer to it except asserting that we dropped all the block responses. First, the double turn was not dropped. We said that there's no link. This is a consistent argument since the 1AC. We did not say that everything is good. We did not say the F is 100% certain itself, and we didn't claim it's also only integram across. The Gordon himself admits that the policies sometimes hold. However, there are the ones that are presented a forced choice. Pessimism is not the alternative optimism. The answer is that both theories are too totalizing, and you should recognize that reality is more complicated than that. The contingent reforms are possible. Second, they dropped our turn to the black beef. D.H. Jones impact turns this theory produce academic passivity and prevent scholars or different backgrounds from forming coalitions. Ask yourself, would it be better if the 1AC was just all white author? Spoiler, or the answer is no. They say the libidinal economy. They've conceded this to Carr and Van Bavel evidence. It's an empirical study of racial bias. It says that forming teams and coalitions resolve those racial biases and sort of overcodes them, which means even if they're implicit in the first place, it was resolved by political coalitionism. But we don't need to win that anyway. The Dylan trick of time stuff, sure. Even if they're sort of like the Gordon evidence understands this understanding of failure, where they're just like these things happen, but then these things happen. Sure, but you can't deny that the initial premise was sort of good. Sure, you can problematize why the affirmative might not be the best thing ever, but the Zadavos ruling and the affirmatives ruling you cannot say are not good things that we should not try. They conceded Pascal's wager from the 2AC, the ruse of analogy thing. They just explained it without answering our argument. We read a card in the 1AR. The Thomas evidence says that every black revolutionary in the 60s made coalitions with brown people because obviously it is impossible to exist in the United States and never interact with a person who is not black if you are a black person. Or Williams evidence also straight turns this because if you are within those institutions in the first place, the best you can do is probably learn about them. The next argument is that the affirmative is about non-black people and you don't solve for black people. This is straight false. A line from their article says, as a young African organizer, my first activism was within the rights movement. I was often disillusioned, but I did not want to change the conversation. I wanted to become more expansive. Their response to this may be correct, that they sort of critique this in the first place, but they just read some like random politics update on DACA in the case in the 1NR. We conceded it and read this line from it, which means it's not about Afro-pessimism. It's like a random blog article, but since we conceded it, this claim proves that our activism is good. Now, what you say the 1NC is about specific relations, this argument disproves the entirety of it. To disprove the plan, they have to win that they don't like. If for their theory to disprove the plan, they have to win that it's an overarching structure. If they're like we're specific, then we just like win on specificness, specificity. I already talked about Zadavos, but yeah.
It's just falsifiability.
Oh yeah, the Zadavos and the plenary power stuff, the Kagan evidence, which the 1AR did say, proves the AF is also falsifiable. Yes, there's empirics, they go affirmative. There was a study in the AF too.
You say you're a theory of social construction. You are a wrong one. The Klein evidence says you sort of flatten black existence. 35 million black people can't have the same experiences. They can't have the same sort of pessimistic understanding. Those are always flux. There are black women right now working to fight for single-payer healthcare. Project Zero of Black Lives Matter is a thing that is trying to put body cameras on police. Our Wilderson evidence says that Wilderson is doing political education for those things right now in the status quo because we don't have the revolutionary strength to just sit back and problematize. They say that I replicate bad faith. There's just a Gordon double turn that was answered above. It's proved by our stuff. We don't have a certainty in the future. Rather, we just say this would probably be a good idea. That's what probabilistic debate is about. They say rejection of material practice is good. No, it's not. Go into the real world. Get a job. Like, do something. Try to do anything. Like, go to, like, a restaurant or something. And then they're like, what would you like? And you go, like, reject. Like, that is not, like, a valuable praxis. It may seem super awesome in a debate round to make fun of us, but in the case of, like, understanding what this theory does in the real world, it would be incredibly irresponsible to vote for it independently. Vote F on presumption, because that was actually dropped, and that's, like, hilarious, but, like, devastating.
Good on ya.
Great debate.